Well, good evening, everybody. This is the meeting of the Fire Station Building Committee on Wednesday, October 18th at 6:30 here at the Lakeville Public Library. Besides LakeCAM, is anybody else recording this meeting? This evening, the meeting will not be streamed live, but it will be recorded, so our public will be able to view at their pleasure down the road. So just real quick, we have a list of questions that we will be asking the firms, giving their presentations this evening. So if we can just, I'd like to do what we did before and just assign. So who would like to take number one?
You want to just go down the road, Madam Chair?
All right, so Mike.
I'll start with one.
All right. Ari?
She's on two.
Matt, you can do three.
Me?
Yep.
4.
And Peter. Nate.
Nate, 6.
Mike.
7.
I lost our number somewhere.
Yep.
And then I'll jump on 7, and then we'll just take it from there.
Yep.
All right. So welcome. We have our first firm here for their presentation, and this is Secosio and Associates Architects. I just want to give you a quick rundown of the evening. We'll introduce ourselves here, and then you'll have 45 minutes to, I guess, just be in front of us.
Yeah.
About a half hour to give a presentation, and then we'll follow up with some questions for you, and then you can ask some questions of us.
Perfect.
All right. So if we wouldn't mind, start down the right here. Chief?
I'm Michael Bryan, I'm the fire chief. How are you?
Great. Oh, well, sorry. I have any questions. I'm Ari Sky, Town Administrator.
I think you all know me, Taylor McDonald, Palmer Associates.
Alex Murphy, Pomeroy Associates.
Lorraine Carboni, Lakeville Select Board.
Matthew Simon, member at large.
Peter Conroy, member at large.
Nathan Dowling, Building Commissioner.
Mike McCullough, member at large.
All right. The floor is yours.
All right, we'll get started. You've already sort of put the time schedule together, so we'll probably try to be about 20-25 minutes. And if you have any questions during the presentation, stop, ask. It's as much give and take back and forth you want is good with us. So you may have something that pops in your head, please do that. So our agenda is sort of we'll go through the team, we'll talk about programming, design, talk about your site selection, mechanical, the design process, and then obviously allowing enough time for a Q&A. So we'll now introduce ourselves as well. Myself, Mark Secosio, Secosio Associates, 50-year-old firm, started by my father, so second generation, been around a long time, and excited about that. We've always, our firm has always basically done institutional work, which my definition of institutional work is people spending their own money. We don't work generally with developers and those kinds of projects. So institutional, state, city, towns is really where our wheelhouse has been for pretty much the whole 50 years.
Kyle Robinson, project architect, Secosio Associates. So I'll be involved in day-to-day operations from early programming through construction.
Hi, I'm Jim Jackson. I'm a managing engineer with PAR Engineering. So I'll be doing the civil engineering work on the project, which is pretty much everything outside the building, the stormwater design, parking, access, grading, that kind of thing. And we also have wetland scientists on our company who can handle if there is any kind of wetland delineation, the wetland permitting that would be required.
And then rounding out our team, we have structural engineer, geotechnical engineer, and cost estimating. So, and the good news is every one of us has worked on multiple, not only multiple projects, but multiple public safety projects. So this team has been together, and we've done a lot of. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not very good at following instructions.
I'm Steve Caron, Building Engineering Resources, with mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection engineer. Public safety is one of the sectors that we have quite a bit of work in. I have a whole team that works with Mark and other firms doing the public safety. And We were the engineer who did your police station here in 2018.
My turn now?
Yes.
Sorry. So that's our team, and proud of it in that sense. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of the recent stations just to refresh your memory. Brewster Fire Station was, who we're still doing work with now, was actually our first entree into Massachusetts work, and won an award for that. Moody Street in Waltham, historic restoration addition, so the building on the left is the original building. We added on everything from this point over is all new. Again, won an award for that as well. Very, in the city, very difficult, very challenging project, but very exciting and fun result. Plymouth Station 1, this was our first station in Plymouth. We've now have done successfully completing our third one, and we'll be doing our fourth station with the potential to do a fifth, actually. Dudley, it was a renovation, so this building was the original station where the apparatus was housed. We built a new addition for the apparatus and renovated the existing building and added the bunks in the back. Just real quick overview, so happy to go with this. Not too far from here, Avon, again, a renovation addition. This is all new to the right and existing to the left. We're working with the town of Edgartown right now for a public safety complex. It's in the study phase. Just wanted to give you a sense of some of the drawings that we do for that phase as well. It was approved and will be going out for architectural design and selection shortly, actually. So we want to spend most of the time talking about your project, what makes your project unique. Every station has a lot of similarities, but every station has a lot of specific needs. It's whether it's site, apparatus, personnel. In your case, you have location, access. We're going to decide on which sites you want to need. You have a combination of full-time and call as well, which not every station has. You have different needs than just a purely full-time station. How do the call people work with, how the call firefighters work with the full-time firefighters, not getting along, but just the way of coming to we've done stuff, Avon specifically, in the project to actually make that transition easier. It works well. Community engagement and then support, because we all know you can't build this project without complete community engagement.
So we've broken down our process to really 4 different areas. So it starts with collaboration. That kind of oversees everything. It's a collaborative project. It's not our project, it's your project. And everybody involved works together through all the stages. And then we call them investigate, incorporate, and articulate. So investigate is really your phase 1. So that is understanding what you need, finding out where it would fit, find a site, getting all the information that's needed to put a project together. So in phase 1, it's programming, it's community involvement, making sure the community is on board, making sure the budget matches with what the community is thinking and the program matches, and then starting the concept design and site investigation. Then incorporation is really the development of the building, just the real design of the building. And then articulation is how does that come out, the construction, the final drawings, really making it a real project. So that would be phase 2 in your project. And it's kind of this overriding system where collaboration goes over it. So we're always working together. You'd see at the bottom, budget review, that is a main item throughout the process. So we don't get 2/3 of the way there and find out it's too much money, you can't afford it. We got to maintain that so that we know the building fits not only the needs, but the town's budget. So we look at programming and how we would start there. First, we go through everything you've already done. We know you've had some other feasibility studies. All that information is good. That sets out a need. As Mark said, a lot of the things are similar. We know the number of people, we know general sizes, the number of apparatus. We can generate that pretty quickly and confirm. So we're really looking deeper into that. And we start with meetings with staff and stakeholders. Whether that's just the chief, whether that's the whole department, that's really up to you. We can set up meetings. We want to hear as much input as we can. That can extend out to the community. What does the community want to see in the building? Because not only is it's a need for the fire department, it's a private building, but it is a community building. A lot of times we'll tour other facilities. So we've done, as Mark mentioned, Plymouth, a number of stations in Plymouth. Bourne we're working with. We've got Brewster's a little farther, but Avon's nearby. We can tour these facilities, see what you like, don't like from initial reaction in recently done projects. But really when we sit down, what we're trying to get out is what's the culture? What makes Lakeville Fire Department? And how can we make that part of the building? Whether that's focusing on certain aspects of the culture that you're proud of and we want to maintain, or even things that you really want to change, and how can we help adjust some things that maybe are seen as a negative in the department. But while each fire station has the same general spaces, we want to make sure we make it your space. So we talk about what spaces do you need? Certain stations, like up in the right, that's Brewster, that has a lot of training on site built into the project. We have obviously workout rooms, apparatus space in here, and some have triage rooms, all the needs, and this goes back to community. How does the community use the building, and how does the fire department use the building? And so this slide is really an example of uniqueness. So these are 4 day room kitchen areas and 4 different fire stations. They all have a different feel. And when we sit down and go through the programming, not only are we saying you need a kitchen, you want these certain things in the kitchen, you want 15, 20 people in there, it's what do you really feel? How does that become Lakeville's fire department? How does that really address over kind of your standard firehouse kitchen? So during this process, we are also looking to design for growth. We don't want to meet just the needs of today, but we don't want to overbuild the station either. So we can sit through that and talk about where do we see, over the next 10, 20 years, where do we see the department going? Is there a desire to switch from, part call, part full-time, more full-time? And all those ideas can affect the final outcome so that in 10 years, you're not sitting with a building that just doesn't work. We want to kind of project that out as best we can for the future needs of the department. At the end of all this, we put together a document that kind of goes through each space that's going to be in the building, the needs, what's going to be in the building, and this is really the roadmap of how we generate the design. So we'll go through, as we said, the kitchen, it'll define number of people, what you want, if there's specific needs or wants. Some departments want it all. We did, at Waltham, it was all stainless steel. Everything was stainless steel. And that was a highlighted item from the get-go. So we highlight those, what may seem like a small item at this time, so we understand what the needs are and things don't get lost. So at the same time as that's going on, we do a similar process with the site. So you've got some sites that we're looking at, and we kind of give that same investigation into the site, and I'll let Jim kind of take over on this.
Good evening. Yeah, identifying a suitable site is a real problem for a lot of towns, because you need to be centrally located, to meet the response times. And you also have to find a site big enough for a fire station. Sometimes a site will look good, but you'll come in and there'll be some wetland resource areas, zoning setbacks, things like that, and the site can get rather small quick. So what we would do first is kind of a desktop survey of the sites. And it seems like the town has identified three sites that seem viable. But we've already looked at some of the issues on the sites as far as the wetlands and, let's see. So this is the Ted Williams Road site. And you can see that green line is the wetland buffers. So those if we worked in that area, we would have to go to the Conservation Commission with a notice of intent. So we try to stay out of that. For the site that's going to be right on the corner, we have driveways going across it, so we would need to get a Conservation Commission permit for that. But it would, it's not a deal breaker, but we would have to go to see that. We also want to look at utilities on the sites. It seems like all three sites have municipal water, which is good. They do not have sewers in the town, so we would be citing a septic system on site, septic system on each site. So that's something early on in the process when we determine probably the lead site, we want to go in and do some test pits and just find out early and make sure it's suitable for the septic system and also for stormwater infiltration on the site. In general, it looks like these sites should be good for that, but you want to find that out early if you're going to have to switch sites before you get too committed to one site or the other. And this site, the one on Precinct Street, similar. There's way in the back. There is some wetland buffers, but those are behind the courts, so they don't seem to be an issue on this site. And it's similar with the utilities. It's got water, but not sewer, so we would have to do the on-site septic system. And this is the Ted Williams Camp site too. So this is the one we do have the driveway coming into Bedford Street and also Ted Williams Camp, which is nice for access. We would have to go to the Conservation Commission for that drive, for the apparatus bays entering right onto Bedford Street. But it does seem to be probably one of the better sites as far as that access. And then here's on Precinct Street, so we're right up close to the street, so there's no wetland impacts there. And the other item was the FEMA floodplain, and I mentioned all three sites are outside the 500-year flood zone, which is important for a public safety building. Generally, typical buildings, you want to be outside the 100-year, but public safety, you really want to be outside the 500-year zone, because if, God forbid, you have a 100-year event, you want the fire department and DPWs, you want any kind of first responders to maintain access. And now I'm going to introduce Steve Carney.
So this is a general layout of a typical fire station with for the safety and hygiene of the firemen. The bays have coded for hazardous or non-hazardous spaces. Like the red is where the apparatus bay is. That's where the potential for the most hazardous exposure is. So the apparatus bay is typically kept under negative pressure. We use airflow into the building and exhaust to generate the pressure. And then the yellow spaces is more of your transition spaces, and the green spaces are the spaces where most of the time it's the occupiable spaces, the low hazard, where we're pressurizing those areas to make sure the airflow is away from those areas. That's all part of the HVAC system design. And when we get into the mechanical systems, we're looking for something that's energy efficient, easy to maintain, gives us good zone control. The fire department has a lot of small spaces and requires a lot of zone control. So a typical unit would be a VRF system because it offers the energy efficiency, the heat recovery, and it can give you zone control. So some spaces could be heating while other spaces are cooling on the systems. And it allows us to get better control of the small spaces within the station. And then incorporating green technology. This sort of comes down to what the town's requirements are for the stretch code, energy efficiency, electrification, decarbonization. We'll have to go over all of these topics and understand what the town's goal is for the station. The systems we typically use are air source heat pumps, electric systems. When we get into the apparatus bay, we want to have more heat. Most of them are going with the radiant slab heat, but a gas-fired boiler at high efficiency is the best system. There are air to water options, but the technology is still growing in that field, and we can investigate those systems. And then the building management system has to be a good system to maintain the control, the pressurization, and also monitor the energy and provide for the most energy efficient systems in operation for the building.
And we work really hard with Steve's group because the building management systems, it's probably the area we get the most complaints from, because they're overcomplicated. We use the keep it simple, stupid philosophy as much as possible. Even those systems are somewhat complicated anyhow, but truly, especially with the VRF systems, individual controls, there's not a lot of like overarching, you don't have to be a mechanical engineer to run the systems. And it's really important, because truly, those are the phone calls we get later on, is I don't know how to turn it on, I don't know how to turn it off, I don't know, why is it freezing in here when it's cold out, vice versa. So we do keep it very simple, and I stress that very much on our projects, not to overcomplicate it. It's a lot of money you don't need to spend, and at the end of the day, it's sort of like your computer, you only use this much of the whole, all those commands on the computer are like. So as everybody sort of had lined out, we've been lining up, is that the first part of the project is that investigatory project process. We're getting to know you, we're getting to learn about you. We haven't committed any pencil to paper or mouse to computer screen nowadays. And then we'll start doing what we call test fits, early design, and start putting concepts out on paper as to what the station might look like. You'll start to see some bubble diagrams, some real sketchy materials selections, and how everything starts to fit together. And we're always going to be getting feedback. We expect a lot of meetings with all the stakeholders to get input on, which direction you want to do. We were in Bourne last night to get a site approval, and one of the committee, the public members, was really adamant about, we want this building to fit in. And one of the things we strive on is really making the buildings fit within your town. This is Lakeville's building, it's not Waxahachio's building, it's something that's going to represent the town and nothing else. And then incorporating, Steve talked about this, but obviously every building is more and more about green energy. We're currently doing a net zero project for the zoo in Roger Williams Park in Providence. The stations, they like energy. They could be done net zero, but that's kind of the stuff that we talk about. But even simple, we do sun exposures upper left here as to really how you put the building, what the orientation is, where the prevailing winds are. If we can address that as much as possible, we can. We always prep the building for solar, whether we put it on or not. Some of the buildings have had it added on. So we're constantly thinking about that, materials, and all the things that are associated with that. And then ultimately we always spend a lot of time on design in these presentations, but as important as the design is, we'll get you a good design, is we actually have to put a building together. We have to put a set of drawings together that can convey our ideas, your building, to the general contractor and ultimately get built. So we pride ourselves on doing really good construction drawings as well. As I said, a lot of times in these presentations it's all flair, but I spend time talking about this because that's important. It's a big percentage of what we do and minimizes change orders and the like. So we are fully integrated with a BIM system, building integration, and we build the building in 3D now. This is Waltham, and this is the actual model, so all of the information is imported into the model, and we have conflict resolution. So if Steve's people tries to put a light in my hard ceiling and it's an acoustical ceiling, they're going to get a little, somebody's going to yell at them. And it's amazing how if you go to this building now and go in the attic, it actually looks like this. It's pretty cool that it works. It's as much information as you put in is what you get out of it. And so it's an important part of the process. We certainly can design you a beautiful building, but it has to be built. And again, it's the financial commitment to the project. And we don't want large cost overruns. We don't want change orders. We don't want that. We're not going to build a building without a change order. I'm not going to say that. And I always get yelled at for saying that, but things are going to happen. It's inevitable, but we want to minimize those and make sure that it's not this huge event and do a good job. So.
We want to just touch a little more about public outreach, because this kind of goes through the whole process. So I mentioned it earlier in programming, engaging people early on, getting their input. But that kind of continues throughout the process, so informing them. So we can do this in a number of ways, in-person meetings, small groups if they're, depending on where the site is, it's a community group that has a vested interest. We can do online interactive things. A lot of times during both online and in group things, we do, it's all digital now. There's programs that you can answer questions, so they can be anonymous questions, people can comment. We generate a lot of feedback that way. And all this is good and keeps the community involved in the process. So, and then when we get to kind of develop a design, those meetings become more of presenting what it is. And so we've got some slides here that show some of these presentation tools we use. So simple 2D drawings that show, you know, different plans, what the uses of the building will be, to using the three-dimensional model to kind of express that and give people a sense of that. And then we do a lot of renderings, and really the goal of these is to make the building look like what it's going to look like. So we've got a couple examples with a rendering on the left that was an early rendering, and there's the Brewster Fire Station. The goal is really to make them as realistic as possible, so that we're not selling something in a rendering that doesn't really look like what it looks like in real life. And now we can do, with these models, we can do 3D animations. We can do walkthroughs. We can do virtual reality to put people in the space. Now this helps both on a smaller scale with the fire departments. You know, if you're unsure about a space or how something's gonna line up, we can put you in that space and show you what it would be like early on, way before, you know, we have to build anything. And then we can use things like this for presentations to keep everybody updated in the community and understand what the plan really is, so you get a feel for what that building's actually going to be like when it's completed.
And it's a visual tool, but it's also a physical tool. So when we started building the model here, and you can see the power lines that are right adjacent to the building, this building is on the street. Early on, when we did our initial modeling and literally building the model, we realized quickly that the lines, the power lines, were going to be within that 10-foot zone of the building, which is not appropriate. So we early on, before the contractor was on board, Eversource, we had to move the lines. It was out of the way, so there was no surprise when the contractor shows up and says, I don't really have enough room to work on this building. We have to move these lines. So the benefit of realistic modeling, and we all do it now, I get that, but we take it very serious, and it's not just a show tool, it's actually a functional tool. And we talk about budget, you know, we all know right now, since COVID, prices have gone, almost done. I'm almost
Getting close, yeah.
I got like 24 more slides.
Let's go.
During COVID, cost control has been very difficult, and we still pride ourselves on bringing projects in on budget. This was the last Plymouth job we just bid, was actually under budget. We try to do our best to keep, sometimes you're not gonna like what we say, you're gonna say, that sounds like an awful lot of money, but we have to build budgets that are realistic to the conservative side, so that we make sure that at the end, when we get a contractor, that we can actually build the building. We have a very high success ratio out of that. At the end of the day, we have lots of experience with public safety facilities. We talked a little bit about diversity. Each building has its own look and feel. You're not going to get a building that Mark Sicoscio designed and my team, and they all have, you know, one element in it that is everything. So we believe that basically with personal involvement, we're a principal-run firm. I stay involved. You'll be seeing myself and Kyle at the meetings, along with Michael, who's one of our designers, along with Jim and Steve and his people. So, you know, as I said, we don't bring the good-looking people here to these meetings. You can disagree if you want. But we're the ones who are going to work with it. I said it earlier, this is it's effectively a marriage for 3 years. We all have to work together. We have to have some fun, but we also have to put a product together at the end of the day that can be welcomed by the town and also built and then executed, so that this building lives the next 50 to 100 years of use. So we take our jobs very seriously, and would love to work with your town and get your next station built. So with that, I didn't do too bad.
No,
We started 3 minutes late.
We did. Mike, do you want to start, please?
Sure, absolutely. Can you please elaborate on your firm's and any sub-consultants' current workload commitments aside from this potential project? Are you immediately available for this project?
We are, and I will say that we're selective on what we pick nowadays, especially as I'm getting a little bit more on in age, and I've always prided myself in taking work that we know we can do, not to because it's not good for anybody. We can commit. I wouldn't be here if I couldn't commit to the project. We have the team members to commit to the project, and we do have other work. I'm not saying we don't, but right now, Plymouth Station in Bourne is coming up on the fire station side. My partner, I have a partner, so we split the work, and he does a lot of schoolwork, and but on my side of the house, we have the capabilities, and we're here, ready to go.
What actually interests your firm about this project, and what the biggest attractions of the job are they to you?
So there is a bit of client selection as well. We do try to interview you at the same time to feel what is good. We've worked with Pomeroy Associates an awful lot as well. And other people that I know have worked in town have spoke highly of your town, and it's good to work in. We took over at Waltham. I will say Waltham was a very difficult time to work in. When the next project came up, I did not go for it. Simple as that. We're easy to work with. We want to work with people that have that sort of same mindset, and the vibe I've got from you, from even the pre-bid and just asking around that. And it's right in our wheelhouse. This is the area we work in. It's 50 minutes from the office. It checked off a lot of boxes. And we do actually physically have a go, no-go meeting on these projects. And you were a very easy go.
Can you describe some of the challenges that you see with this project, and have you considered how you might overcome them?
The work you've done so far has been great. Site selection is always an issue. Money is always an issue. Building an efficient building and trying to stay within budget, whatever budget we end up setting. I don't see any huge red flags at this point, frankly. We've checked the sites out. I think you've got 3 viable sites. Often we don't have that. Once we get into programming and learn a little bit more about the size of the building, and hopefully we have a match with funds available. And I know you have a budget of 13-ish million. That has to all be updated, and that's older, I understand. But so I truly don't see any big red flags.
The town of Lakeville has previously completed a feasibility study for the fire station project. Can you please describe how your firm would use and integrate this information in the current project?
So we've read through the feasibility study. You provided it to us. It was pretty high level, frankly. The feasibility, you did rule out renovating and moving into that station, and thought it made more sense to build a new station, so we'll build off of all that information that was provided. We're not going to reinvent it, but I think it was a good start, and you're here because of that. So we'll use it. We already have used it, frankly, to get here to this point.
The RFQ timeline requires phase 1 to be complete for a special town meeting in late spring. How does your firm feel about this duration? And can you please briefly describe your proposed process and schedule to accomplish that goal?
Yeah, so it's aggressive, I'm not gonna lie. This is kind of the two-way street thing that we need to work together. And quick decisions, if things are presented, we need to get reactions, we need to move along quickly. There's a lot of work to be done between now and then, the program, the design, the budgeting, and the selling, frankly. And we want to talk seriously about the schedule. We can meet the schedule, but we have to move. There cannot be, and be careful, time, sometimes pushing it off, I'm not trying to change the schedule, but sometimes pushing it off a little bit makes a huge amount of sense. We've done that, with bidding projects. We just said, we want to go now, and we strongly recommend you better wait, just wait. This is not the right time. Wait 3 months, the market's going to cool off a little bit. This is a bad time to be bidding a project. So, we're not going to always say yes to you. I mean, that's our goal. We'll be honest, we'll tell you the truth always, and we'll have a conversation. And sometimes it's in the sand and you've got to do it. And we're capable of doing that, but we want to understand the consequences of all the decisions. I think that's the best way to say it.
And what is your firm's design philosophy when it comes to public safety projects? I mean, I think you touched upon that, so, but if you could just elaborate a little bit on that.
Safety first, the health and safety of the firefighters in the building. Steve talked about the red, green, and yellow. It's critically important. We still see stations designed today that don't take that into consideration. I hate to say that, but sometimes we see things that, you'll see the day room like next to the apparatus bay. It happens. For whatever reason. It's not good practice. It doesn't cost more money to do it, right? So you just want to make sure that certainly safety, convenience, making sure that people can get from point A to point B safely, get to the apparatus quickly, their equipment in the right place, all the things that they need. And we do that well.
What sets your firm apart from the other architects with similar experience?
I told you my good looks, but other than that, it's a tough question. I know what we do is that, and I know the other two firms, we compete against each other regularly. They're good firms. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not capable of doing the work, because they are. At the end of the day, it's a fit. It's really about the comfort that we have, and it's hard. I know we do this in 45 minutes. You met me for the first time tonight. We're going to spend 3 years working together. The best thing I can say is check our references if you haven't already. Talk to people that know us. We're really, really good at what we do. We're easy to work with. We listen to you as the client. The biggest negative on all architects is they don't listen. Quite often that's the case, and it's always been put into my head, from my dad all the way to today, is that it's about you, it's not about us. It's not, I don't have this big ego. I have a little ego, but not a big ego. But it's about you, and I think that we take that seriously from day one. And I think that's a differentiator. And as the owner of the company, you're dealing with an owner that we can make decisions. It's not like I got to go back to the office and, Kyle's in the same position as to be able to make quick decisions. It's not a lot of hierarchy. We're not a 100-person firm. We're a 15-person firm. So every job is extremely important to us.
Right, and just a couple more questions, I think. Can you describe one instance where you had a significant issue or a problem, and on the particular project, and how did you overcome it?
We never had that. I will say, one of the biggies was Plymouth, actually, when we did Station 7. They tested for liquefaction, and the bidders didn't provide we did geopiers, so the rocks basically jammed into the ground, and anyhow, so the piers, the people that do that work did not include the liquefaction within their design. And there's only a couple of people that do it, and both firms didn't provide it. They should have. There was no question of whether they should or they shouldn't have, but for whatever reason they didn't. And as you'll find out, we were very honest. It was big. We were under budget anyhow, but it was like, and we understood there was an anomaly in the number, but it was a $75,000, almost $100,000 change. And we explained. We got the information. We reached out to the town. It was our first project with them, and we explained the situation. We explained it to the committee, and everyone understood that, okay, this was a clear miss by them, and it got approved, and it made sense. And we were very honest, and just this happened. Stuff happens, and that doesn't happen often, but that's one that was sort of, I remember because it was one that I wasn't happy about, but It's the truth. And we've done several projects since, so we've solved it with them. And there really aren't a lot of them, I'll be very honest. And my gray hair was from other things, not from that.
Anybody else on the committee have any other questions they'd like to ask?
I have a question about schedule. What controls does the firm have in place during the design phase to monitor design progress against the schedule? And what controls does the firm have during the construction phase for submittal review? If progress falls behind on either of these items, what action does your firm take to get back on schedule?
So Taylor keeps me on schedule because he's constantly keeping us, on track. But we'll set a schedule from the beginning, and again, hitting the May date, we'll set a schedule early on in our initial meeting. We've got 2 months for programming, another month for follow-up, 3 months for design. We've got 3 months for public outreach. So we'll have very significant milestones set already to hit that date. Because we've got to be done ahead of the May meeting, which is the real problem, is so that you can get out in time, out in front of the public with the information and get to them. So we'll have milestone dates that we follow and very strict follow. We have to make it. And within construction, nowadays, most of the contractors use Procore is a typical sort of program that monitors submittals, RFIs, changes, all those things. And every single weekly meeting, we'll have pretty much weekly job meetings. We'll go over those, and we stay on top of that. We do not get behind. Because the last thing we want is to say the architect's holding us up. And we take that very serious as well. So we try to get, and we ask early on with the contractor, we don't want to be approving the appliances on day one. There's actually within our specifications the requirement for a schedule for submittals, so that they're not giving us the appliances on day one, wasting time selecting appliances when we don't need them for another year. So foundations, rebar, those kinds of things, quick, early, we understand those. So it's the same progression.
All right.
Mark, you mentioned a couple of times about communicating with the public engagement, things like that. Is that marketing or that public relations, is that something that you handle internally, or is there like a team or a subcontractor that you typically utilize?
We don't. It's sort of face-to-face for the most part. So no, we don't have a separate marketing department or anything that would do that. If it's something that you wanted, it's certainly something we could do. But typically, no. It's typically having public meetings. We go to the meetings, have very much a forum like this, present the design, get the feedback. Not all of it we're going to take, but there's pieces. There's always good suggestions, and sometimes there's some good suggestions to make changes, or we need to add a pathway here, and you don't realize you just cut a pathway to go to school and you're just making it up. But how do you deal with that? Last night was the playground, because there's a playground adjacent to the station, and we placed the playground on the backside of the station, way away from the apparatus bay, not where they're egressing out, responding out. So that's the kind of thing. But yeah, we don't. No, the answer to your question is really no. We don't have a PR company or staff.
Thank you.
Do you gentlemen have any questions for us?
No, you said you were going to make a decision pretty quick. We'd love to work with you all. Get going. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, I did explain that, after the interviews this evening, we'll deliberate and then, make a recommendation that we can forward to the select board for their meeting on October 30th.
So we did good on time, too.
Yeah,
All right.
very good.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming. Just give you a quick layout of the land for for this presentation. Usually about half hour presentation, and then about 15 minutes for some Q&A. Before we dive in, I'd like to go around the room and we'll introduce ourselves to you, and then we'll turn the floor over to you.
Perfect, thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Bryan. I'm the Lakeville Fire Chief.
Ari Sky, Town Administrator.
Taylor MacDonald, Palmer Associates, OPM.
Alex Murphy, Palmer Associates.
Lorraine Carboni, Lakeville Select Board.
Matthew Simon, member at large.
Peter Conroy, member at large.
Nate Dowling, Building Commissioner.
Mike McCullough, member at large.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. This is not an easy thing to be interviewing a bunch of people and spending your nights out doing that, so thanks for that. So we are the Galante Architecture Studio and our expanded team. My name is Ted Galante. We have been in practice for 25 years. This is our 25th year. We're very happy about that. And we specialize in public safety facilities, and we're going to talk to you about that. You've probably seen some in our RFQ. We're going to talk to you about a few of those projects and talk to you a little bit about your project and some thoughts that we have there.
Good evening. My name is Paolo Carissimi, and I'm a principal at the Galante Architecture Studio as well. With Ted, I've been working with him since 2006. So.
I'm Yarlock, so Galante Architecture Studio, Senior Associate. I've been working with Ted and Paolo for about 11 years.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Ed Wellington with Consulting Engineering Services. We're the MEP engineer on this team. We've been working with Ted and his team for many years on a wide variety of public safety projects.
Apparently it's the time where I stand up, so my name is Steve Garvin. I'm president and principal of Stamios Consultants. We're civil engineers and land surveyors. We have been working with the Galante Studio for probably 8 years now on, I'd say, 15 projects. We probably have 6 or 7 currently going on in their office, mostly in the public safety realm.
So the team is extensive. Our firm is about 25 people. You're meeting just 3 of us tonight. There's a wide group of people behind us. We also have on the team LeMessurier as our structural consultant, Semiotis and CES you're meeting tonight. BT Emerson, Jamie Emerson is our spec writer. Jamie worked in our office for 10 years as an architect and decided to start his own gig. We helped him get started, and he still writes our specs, so there's a lot of depth there. PM&C is our cost estimator, and we know that there's a natural heritage component to your sites, and so while we did not submit them in the RFQ, there's the possibility of bringing someone like Epsilon onto the team. It sounds like you might have a natural heritage consultant anyway, but we just wanted to offer that as a possibility. So fire stations are what we do. We do a lot of them, and this is what we focus on. And so we'll talk to you about them. But we've built projects all over the place. This is FDNY in New York City that Paolo and I built a number of years ago, and Davenport, Iowa is on the far left there that we also did a number of years ago, and other projects and here and there. So we're going to talk about a few of them. I think Yar will take you through New Bedford.
Yeah.
So that one, I think that one's the clicker.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, so New Bedford Public Safety Facility, it's about a 25,000 square foot facility, fire, EMS, and police. You can see here the project where fire and EMS are on the right side, police is on the left side. There's a glass, what we like to call an atrium, through the center of the building that splits the building but also joins the building in the same way and brings natural light into the building. You can see it's a 5-bay apparatus, drive-through bays. This image is right at the corner of the lot. This is where this beacon, we like to call it a beacon. It's a way for us to use design and work with the city to engage the community and have this light-filled beacon to kind of welcome the community. You can see in this the masonry materials that are used on this building. What you can't see in this is actually behind, on the other side, if there was an arrow, you could see it. A lot of brick mill buildings, so the context is actually really represented here in terms of the materials with the surrounding neighborhood. There's zinc material here, also used, we've used on a few projects. It's a very low maintenance material, very durable, lasts 200 years potentially. You know, this is this point in the building is actually the police side, so there's behind that area where you see is glass is actually a bullet-resistant partition. We put some film on the glass too in some locations also as for bullet resistance for the police department. This is somewhat typical for a lot of our stations in terms of a lot of natural light, a lot of light in the station. We like to use light materials, but also durable materials, ground-face CMU on the walls. In this case, we have some epoxy on the apparatus bay areas where the firemen are getting out of the fire department's getting out of their vehicles. You know, metal doors, storage mezzanines, capture systems for the vehicles. So this is the lobby in New Bedford. So this is the area I was talking about as sort of an atrium. So you come in, and this is where we brought in some of the warmer materials from the exterior, like the masonry, and then we added wood in here just to bring in warmth as a welcoming space for the community. This is like the main entrance for the building. You can see behind this glass wall is actually another room. That's the community center. You know, a room that's not just for the police and fire, but also for community events. But at the same time, these walls have a have a bullet resistance to them, masonry, and also the glass, the glazing.
So in Dennis, Mass, we're about to finish this fire station, which is a 3-bay station, drive-through, similar to the other one. There is a masonry volume on the left-hand side, which is the apparatus bay and all the accessory room around it. And then there is another volume, 2-story volume, on the left-hand side for the administrative area on the first floor, living quarters on the second floor, and then you can see a smaller volume in the back, and that's for the training room for the fire department, but also it can be used as a community center. So we're always trying our project to think about how we can give back to the community and so merge the need of the towns in different ways. So in this case, we have that community room that has a separate entrance, so that people that go, when there is a community event, they don't go directly through the fire station, but they have a separate access. This is another view from the other side. You can see the masonry building, as Jan was saying. The brick cladding is a very resistant material that it's often used for apparatus bay. You can see the 4 folding doors here. They open in 4 seconds, and that's much faster than a typical overhead door. So in this case, it's a drive-through bay, so this is where the rigs are leaving the building, and this is where we're using the folding doors. In the back, we have just regular overhead doors for when the trucks come back to the station. This is the building under construction. Again, it's supposed to be done by the end of November, so you can see from inside, from the back to the front, the folding doors. And here again the folding doors, but in the previews on the right-hand side, you can also see get a glance of the mezzanine above the accessory room. And the material, of course, as Jar mentioned, CMU concrete, which will be covered in epoxy soon. Again, durable material. We know that there is a lot going on in the apparatus bay. There is all sort of activity, washing rigs, running around, moving equipment. So we want to make sure that that's a place where things go well, and the maintenance, it's easy, and materials are durable. That's our first goal, usually in an apparatus bay, and light, as Jar said, bringing a lot of light in. A couple of photos from the exterior. So that's the actual building under construction, the 2-story volume. There is a canopy that still needs to be cladded in aluminum above the main entrance, and this is when they're finishing up the brick veneer around the apparatus bay volume.
So you can see that these buildings are not only, well-planned, they're really durable, they're easy to maintain, and they're intended to be long-lasting. So concrete masonry units on the interior are all very light. They don't require painting every 5 years. They're sealed once at the factory, once on site, and done. So we try and specify materials that are very durable, long-lasting, low maintenance, right? The people in the fire department should be working on fires and other issues and taking their exams to move up the ladder and what have you, and not have to worry about maintaining their building very often. That's something that we also, that I think when we get to that point, we can talk about HVAC and how we try and make those systems easier to maintain and easier to manage. We're currently, and so those two buildings are nearly complete, and these two gentlemen are be freeing up soon on those. We're also working on the Ipswich Public Safety Facility up in Ipswich, Massachusetts, police and fire. Pardon me. It's a 4-bay building on the left, which is the PD, the fire department, and on the right is the police department with a community center in the bottom corner. Again, we like to specify 4 full doors. Overhead doors were the standard for many years, and the door engineering has developed so that they're basically bifold doors, and they open quicker, 4 seconds, as Paulo mentioned, but also in a power outage or some scenario, they're easy to move if someone has to move them. They get out of the way before the fire truck hits the gas. The driver hits the gas and doesn't tear one of the panels off. So there's some benefits. They are more expensive. That's something we'll talk to you about as we get into those.
Depends on the department too.
Sorry?
Depends on the department.
Depends on the department and how the department wants to be run. Many of those things. So this project is currently in construction documents. Bidding is probably January, February, and I think it's a 28,000 square foot building. And so far we keep on hitting the budgets. It's tricky, but we keep on hitting the budgets, and this is the team that has been working on this. Northbridge.
Yeah. So Northbridge Fire Department headquarters, Northbridge, Massachusetts. So this project is 30,000 square feet, and then there's a 4,000 square feet separate building in the back of this one. It's for apparatus storage, additional things like brush fire trucks. So this project, in design, we had talked with the department about having a modern building, but also thinking to kind of reflect on parts of the history of the town. So their mill buildings are a big history of Northbridge, and so part of this was to use some of the materials that the buildings have, some of the architectural accents like this mansard roof in the front, and then this kind of pyramid roof on top there. You actually see similar kind of things in Northbridge.
It's hard to see, but right here there's an historic hose cart that we're actually hanging up on some heavy timber that reclaimed mill building beams that are going up there. Sorry.
Yeah, the fire department actually put out a fire in Northbridge that was at a mill building, and they actually held on to the wood. We actually put that wood into the facility. And here you can see masonry again, like Paul was mentioning, durable material. CMU actually on the tower, that's a 4-story training tower, and hose drying. Northbridge Fire Department is still doing hose drying. And then we have insulated metal panels as sort of in between material there, which is also very durable, but it's also very energy efficient, which is a very important thing that we'll definitely talk about more of, but it's becoming a big factor on all these projects. This image is again a design image, but so you can see that warm welcoming entrance in the middle. That's where you enter into a space, and it's a lobby space, and then it goes in further, and you're into a very, very large training room, which also serves as a community space. So this is during construction, still under construction right now. It's a pretty recent photograph. This is the rear of the building, insulated metal panels. you know, this was an important design element that the fire department really likes. They like red, so this next image is the front of the building, so this is the other side. So you know, watch rooms on the left-hand side there, the 5-bay apparatus, and what you can see here is actually these that insulation, and there's a subframe, a girt subframe for terracotta system, but you know, we have to remind ourselves that these buildings, the envelopes of the buildings, have to be very energy efficient now that the codes are starting to get more complex, and so this is a insulation that's used specifically for a hard value, but it's also very water resistant insulation that goes behind a rain screen system. This is inside the 5-bay apparatus. This is brand new, newly poured epoxy flooring. The fire department chose to, you know, put their patch into the center of the bay there, and that's under epoxy. You can see the CMU again, the ground face CMU. On top of that is the storage mezzanine. It's actually a really big storage mezzanine, so they're really happy about that because they have a lot of things that they didn't have the room to store before. Now they can store it up and out of the way, but also easily access it by removing some of those panels, and they can bring things down from the storage mezzanine. The apparatus floor also has radiant heat system, both inside the bays and then outside. There's a snow melt system on both aprons. We sprayed the ceiling with acoustic spray foam insulation because the fire department had a previous, in their previous station, they had an issue with acoustics and echoing. That's completely gone now. It's wonderful to be inside here and talk and have conversations, and people are doing construction, and there's no echo. So, here you go, Ted.
Again, you know, durable, light-filled, efficient, radiant heat in the slab. There's, you know, quite a bit, and the coordination of these things, the detailing of these things, takes a lot of energy and effort and imagination, and we spend a lot of time putting these documents together to make sure they're all coordinated. And we have a quality assurance, quality control program in our studio where we meet very often, have sets of eyes always reviewing documents and checking and rechecking, and you know, we're on calls very often with these gentlemen coordinating all these things. I think you're going to talk about Cambridge.
Yes. So we're currently working, we're in the construction document phase for the renovation of the Cambridge Fire Headquarters. It's a beautiful 1932 buildings, but I mean, it's an old building, so it doesn't really work with the new standards and with the new need of the this century fire department. So this is just a photo of the old building, an historic photo, and that's, I mean, from the outside, of course, you can't really see a lot. We're going to clean up, of course, the stone, the masonry, work on the anti-seismic and everything. We'll try to repropose the original wood doors, but in this case, again, using the 4 folding doors that they're like highly customable, so we can repropose the original design of the. Of those doors inside,
1 foot lower.
1 foot lower, yeah. We're doing a gut renovation of the entire building, and we're lowering the apparatus bay floor 1 foot because their trucks barely fit under the current door. And at the same time, since we're lowering the apparatus bay, we're also lowering the basement because it's currently already pretty low, so we don't want to lose that foot on the basement, and we're putting a lot of like equipment and such in there. On the front of the building, this is a rendering of the finished work, since the building sits at an important intersection between Broadway and Cambridge Street. So we have this intersection with this triangular site, and we call that the point. Cambridge is going all electrical in all their like public buildings. So this is a net zero building, all electrical, but all electrical also needs a separate like Eversource station just dedicated for this building. So since it's like kind of like a stamp of a site, there is not much room. The only place where we could put that Eversource station was the front of the site at that intersection. But of course, we didn't want the people just walk by and see a bunch of like switch gear, transformer, and chain link fence around it. That's what typical Eversource requires. So we came up with some design also to wrap that all that equipment, and that also just give it a different level, a whole different importance to the project itself.
So a couple things I just want to touch on with Cambridge really quick. One of the aspects of this site is, as Paulo said, it's a postage stamp. We work in urban environments a lot, like Cambridge, right? This firehouse covers my house, my children, our office, like that. This is our firehouse. We wanted to make sure we get this right, but we're making every inch count because that's what we have to do, right? We're fitting more things in this little tiny postage site than can be the case, and that sort of super efficient thinking is what we try and bring to every building. So when we're talking about mezzanines above, we need for turnout gear room, you need an 8 or 9 foot high ceiling, but for an apparatus vehicle, you need 17, 18 to 20 feet high ceiling, right? Depending on if you're gonna lift the stick and all that stuff. So now we have this other mezzanine space that we can use on the other side. So we're always thinking not only in plan, how wide the room should be, but what can we use in the volume? What can we use up here? Where can we put things so that we make it more efficient for the department? I think that's as urban architects, we use that wherever we're building. I think that's an important piece.
In our rural projects is the same, because rural sites can also be restrictive, and you have to be very careful to think about, using up as less space as possible.
Okay. Northbridge had significant issues with Mass DOT and wetlands, right? So while it was a very extensive site, a very rural area, it got very tight on the site to how to work through that and maneuver through the site also.
Yeah. And so another thing we're very proud of is that our estimates, our cost estimates, are landing dead in the center of where the bid range is, and we're buying below our estimate. So let's talk about Belmont Police, for example, public safety building. We were estimating at 7.5. The bids came in at 7.3. In New Bedford, we were estimating 13.9, came in at 12.9. Now there might have been a bid at 14.9, but we were able to buy it below our estimate, and that's been a consistent theme in our practice for at least a dozen years or more, and we're able we argue with our cost estimators. We wrestle with our cost estimators. There's healthy friction that happens, and out of that comes really good numbers, and we're able to get these numbers all the time. So that's just something that we've been consistent with, whether it's been in Davenport, Iowa, or here in Boston. In Boston, 4.2. We have bid strategies that we put in place where we have a base bid, and then we have add alternates and ways of managing that. And so I think making, especially now, these numbers look like bargains compared to where numbers are coming in now, because numbers have gone up, escalation and such are stupid high. And so we have ways that we're trying to manage that all across the board. We spend the town's money like it's our money. We're careful. We're very careful. We put in one key design element that makes the building have an identity, but we make sure the building works in every other possible way and in all efficiencies that we can. Sometimes we get too efficient, and we also have to be careful about that. And so we can have a conversation about that at some point. You want to take us through this?
Yeah. Okay, so as we build, as you can see, we build a lot of fire station, public safety building, police department. So we like to think ourselves as national experts. We also we don't just work on this project. We also write articles. In this case, for example, there was an article about the question if it's more convenient to renovate or replace an old building. We recently did an article. We wrote an article about materials to be used in the fire station. Our office participate to several conferences for both fire station and also public safety in general, police design. This is Ted Yar and a woman from our office at the station design this year to 2023, and we're already starting to thinking about the next conference in 2024, how to get there and what kind of like talk to do, because we also do talk at this conference. And the good thing of this conference is that we bring our knowledge to these conferences. We have talk, but we also learn because we listen to talk of the other firms. So there is a sharing of the experience, but there is also a learning from the experience of other firms.
And fire departments also do talks, and we learn from them as well.
Yeah. Our office also did a study with Emily Sperry from Harvard University about carcinogens. We know that this is a very delicate problem for firefighters. They go out, they have their PPE, their PPE protect them somehow from the carcinogens, but when they come back, they bring the carcinogens into the station. So there are ways to try to limit the carcinogens that enter the building, but they still get inside the building. So when we start thinking about our building, we do this drawing that you see here called kind of bubble diagram, where we start like putting things together. So the apparatus bay is what we call the hot zone, because it's the main area where all these carcinogens comes in. So we want to make sure through those little connection highlighted in red that those carcinogens don't get spread out through the entire building, through the area where they have like their kitchen, their rooms, when they spend some of the part of the day relaxing while they're not out of duty. In this case, this is one of our competitors' plan. You can see like the apparatus bay and then the living quarter. The hot zone is the red, the cold zone is the green, but there is no buffer, what we call buffer between the two. So if you open the door from the apparatus bay, those carcinogens can just go through the building and get into the living area, get into the kitchen, their coffee, whatever. So what we need to do is we need to create a buffer. Of course, this is just a diagrammatic. It's a big yellow rectangle, but it has to be an area between the two that also with the help of the mechanical engineer is ventilated in a way that prevents all those carcinogens to travel through the building.
We manage that in terms of pressure relationships, so our HVAC plans have air positively pressurized such that the carcinogens are moving towards the hot zone and not spreading into the other areas.
And so this is not to say, I mean, there's a lot of cleanliness and such that goes on, preparation before the department gets back to the building. And so it's not to say that carcinogens are definitely coming back in, but if they are there, if there's something contaminated closed, there's ways of decontaminating vehicles and people before they get into their house, right? As architects, we take care of their building. Outside of the building, the department takes care of that, and their PPE takes care of that. But and there's clean cap strategies and all sorts of things. But what we can control as architects, what we help is manage that in the house, right? And with Emily Sparrow, we were finding that, at Engine 4 in Boston, for example, they swabbed a cup, and there was particulate matter in the coffee cup that was carcinogenic material. And what happens when you come back from a run, right? You take up your stuff, you go to the kitchen, you get a coffee, you drink a coffee. Well, that's what we're trying to avoid and trying to protect our firefighters so that they have healthy lives, and that's critical, not only in this house but in their personal house too when they go home. So we're probably getting close to our time frame. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on the project for you guys as we see it. Really just from your RFQ and from a little bit of understanding some of the work you've done. It seems like you've done a good amount of work. The programming is starting to come together. We understand some of the department and some of the vehicles involved. We understand that you've done a bit of a feasibility study in terms of some of the sites that a firm was looking at, and we think this is some great work. There's really a lot that you've started here. It raised some of these things when we see them, we think about them critically and we raise questions. So this is not to throw anybody under the bus, and I'm sure Williamsburg is a great place. We worry about things like when there's a single point of entry, and that's where the emergency vehicles are leaving, that is a concern for us. We recommend a couple of points of entry, and we can talk about that. Turning radius and such on this site seem a little bit uncertain. The building size talks about 7,500 square feet for 6 bays. It's really probably closer to 9,200 square feet for 6 bays. So that has cost implications, right? Accessible spaces on the emergency apron is great. It's a great risk. This site, 2 points of entry, much better. Still has some concerns about turning radius and accessible spaces and things. And the site near the senior center. Similar, has 2 points of entry. I worry about the traffic going to and from the senior center, but we'd like to learn more about that. Using geotech data from the senior center may be possible. We do recommend getting closer geotech data for the site because building codes are more stringent than they were when the senior center was built. So we think there's a lot to work with on these sites. We think they're all doable. And so we just said, what do 6 bays look like? What does 6 bays look like for Lakeville? And what, given the program, how does the building start to come together, right? Given the 3 or 4 officers, the equipment vehicle, the vehicle inventory, and how do we start to think about that? And so in the center of here we have 6 drive-through bays, and usually you've got an ambulance bay on one side if there's ambulance, and usually it's a narrower bay, 16 feet versus 18 feet. You could deploy out the front and out the back. It could be that they run straight. You've got a boat that probably doesn't need to go out very often, but an engine that does need to go out. When we have a ladder, we want to put it in the middle so we're not running from the kitchen to the apparatus bay and then having to run around the ladder, but the ladder's in the middle. So I think there's just strategic things that we're starting to think about. Decon and support spaces off to one side, gear racks, turnout gear on the other side, and maybe future, if the site can handle it, a future expansion for a bay. Again, we like to think 50 years in the future. Right? What is the possibility of the town growing, need for equipment? We do a talk at one of the conferences about firefighting 200 years from now, and what does that look like? And you can imagine it's a lot of fun, right? We talk about UFOs and there's robot dogs that are being used now, but it's just a lot of we like to think about what's happening in the future. Upper floor, we're showing 5 bunk rooms. You probably only need 4, but 1 for expansion for future, and things of that nature. So I think that's the where we are. Our marketing department says, why hire us? And we say, this is why. We know these buildings well. We spend a lot of time in and around and working on them. And we'd love to work with you. We'd love to be your team. So I hope that raises questions and answers questions. And I look forward to talking a bit more.
Okay. Chief?
So I'll kick things off. I have some set questions to ask you.
Sure.
Can you please elaborate on your firm's and your consultants' current workload and commitments aside from this potential project? And are you immediately available for our project?
The answer is yes, we are immediately available for your project. These 2 gentlemen are finishing projects in the next 2 months, let's say by the end of the year, and one in November, one in December. Absolutely available. We're 25 people deep, and we've got the bandwidth on our side and our team.
We have about 170 staff at CES, and definitely have the deep bench to be able to properly staff the project.
Ted, what interests
you guys are right in Norwood, so it's yeah. Sorry.
Ted, what interests your firm about this project, and what are the biggest attractions of this job to you?
I think this is what we do, and we like to help fire departments. I think I think the project is, right in our wheelhouse. It's the type of building that we do all the time. It's a 6-base station. We do 4 or 5 base stations constantly. It's not like Cambridge that's covering my personal house, but it is a building that needs to be developed in a way that helps Lakeville. We did Northbridge. We started to talk to Northbridge about their building, and we found out later that they have never built a building. They've never built a fire department. A fire station is a once-in-a-generation facility, and we like to be the architects for that. We like to try and help the communities do that. In Northbridge, it's a once-in-a-lifetime. I mean, it's a 250 years they've never built a building.
They were handed a mill building and then they just moved in, and that was it.
Yeah. And so I think the towns become our friends, become part of who we are. It's just a widening of our community, and I think that's part of what's enriching for us.
Can you describe the challenges that you see with this project, and have you considered how you might overcome them?
Box turtles. I think we've never worked on a project with box turtles. I think that's one thing, and it doesn't sound like that's a problem. It sounds like you guys you're doing some careful work around that, and we're ready to jump in and help with that. As I've been on the phone with Epsilon, that Steve has.
In our office has dealt with box turtles, salamanders, long-eared bats recently up in Whittier and Haverhill. We do a lot of work in communities and understand the challenges of making sure you're meeting all the performance standards to be able to coexist between what needs to be done and nature that's there. And we understand that and push the limits to build things that people look back and go, wow, that came in very nicely and fits well within that environment.
And I think the other parts of this, I think they're unknown struggles, and maybe some know more about them than others, but the energy code recently changed in Massachusetts on July 1st. The energy code is a really onerous code. We could not find anyone who could develop the code for us, who understood the code well enough, who could do a code analysis for us. And so I said, find out who wrote it, and let's go to that person. And so we went to British Columbia Hydro, BC Hydro, because they are the basis of the code. And we went to the Department of Energy Resources, and we found the gentleman who wrote the code, and we sent him our analysis and our calculations for 2 buildings, Ipswich and another building. And he said, you're right, you're on target, this is how you do it, here's what you change. It used to be that insulation has what's known as an R value, right? It's an R19 or an R24 or whatever it was. Now you have to derate the R value as you're putting a wall together. So every brick tie that holds those brick veneer in has to be calculated as a loss in that R value. That's just one aspect of many pieces. So BC Hydro has a document that we've gotten a hold of because we're talking to people in British Columbia. I have some great friends in British Columbia. I ski out there every year. And we got in touch with BC Hydro, and then we met this fellow at the Department of Energy Resources, and he's been helping us. The building inspectors are not even equipped yet to inspect these things. There's a whole new learning curve that has to happen, and everyone, the best consultants in Boston didn't know how to do this. We now know how to do this, and our office is doing this for a number of projects. So the energy code is a big challenge, I think, coming up. I'll also say that budgets are a big challenge. We respect that. We understand that. Numbers have done nothing but gone up, and we become an advocate for your budget as we develop this project. And you'll learn about it at conceptual design, schematic design, design development, 50% CD, 70% CD, whatever the numbers are, 4 or 5, 6 times, so we get it. So, sorry, I talk a lot.
The town of Lakeville has previously completed a feasibility study for the fire station. Can you please describe how your firm would use and integrate this information? Kind of already.
Yeah, I think we've started to take a look at it, and we would look at those really 3 sites at sort of 2.5 direct across from the police station or at the intersection by the police station. We'd like to understand the ownership limits and where they go. I guess they're part of a national park, and how the size of the building we have some questions about, and the size of the lot we have some questions about. how many of those 22 call firefighters are going to be on site? How often is there planning for all of that and parking? Those are things that we'd have to take into account as we go through that feasibility study further.
Okay. The RFQ timeline requires phase 1 to be complete for special town meeting in late spring. How does your firm feel about this duration, and can you please briefly describe your proposed process and schedule to accomplish our goals?
I think that we can meet that. We can meet that without question. Our process is to hit the ground running. Take the programming that we know. Take some of the sketches that we've started. Sit with whomever the committee, the chief, whomever the chief appoints, and go through that information. Make sure we have it right, and start working sessions as quickly as we can to develop and generate ideas that are build to a certain point, while we're using our current metrics, because we're pricing projects constantly and putting numbers associated with those projects, get it to a schematic design level, and then get it to our cost estimators to put the numbers together. So that's what we do all the time in town, and we'll stand up with you at town meeting and describe the how and why, and why is it so expensive, and why does it need to be seismically.
Well, all our projects, we work with an awful lot of Chapter 149 public projects, go through town meeting, okay? I speak at town meeting for my own town, I'm the chairman of the planning board and speak to things. Ted and his whole team has spoken at town meeting. We understand that's an important component to make sure that you have the right support. It's a lot of money for taxpayers. And it's important for them to understand what they're getting for them.
Can you describe one instance where you had a significant issue or problem on a project and how you overcame it?
Every project has its challenges. There's always something that comes up here or there. One of my favorite stories is that in Belmont, we were selected to help them do a feasibility study for their police station because they were considering, they have an historic building. They were going to put an elevator on it, repair or create some women's locker facilities, and put a sally port because they didn't have a place where they brought prisoners when they brought them back. And so a person in a wheelchair couldn't get anywhere in the building. They were worried about getting sued. They had terrible gender inequity, and they were worried about getting sued. And when they would bring a prisoner back in a police cruiser, they would bolt because they weren't in a sally port. And so they brought us in to solve that problem and just patch the building, and then they were going to mothball the building and build something new. And they were told they could only put an elevator in one part on the outside, and the fire department didn't want to put their fire truck back there. So we did this little study, and we said, what if we put the elevator inside? And they said, well, how are you going to do that? Inside and then outside. And we make a little lobby on the second floor, and here's how we can get the restrooms and gender equity to work with the locker rooms. And if we just build a little spot over here for the sally port, and if we dig under it, we can get some storage. And if the lobby on that elevator becomes this big as opposed to just around the elevator, we suddenly solve all your square footage needs. And so with a quick study, we doubled the size of their building, and then we brought that to town meeting, and we said, for $11 million, we can save you $40 million. And we can renovate that building and make it a facility that stays in the town. And that's exactly what we did. And it was a challenge because we had this idea that we knew that we could save this building. The committee was like, we just wanted to put a couple of things on it, but if you can really do that, then let's talk about it. And so we worked with the committee, convinced them, brought it to town meeting, got it funded, and built it. And everyone in the town, call Chief McIsaac in Belmont, they're delighted with the building. It's serving them, and they kept them in the city, in the town center. And now it's part of their historic district that's all around the area. And so
when Ted says a quick study, it really means a very creative, unique solution that nobody else had, no one else came up with. So that's the energy that he puts into design on all the projects, I guarantee.
The town of Belmont came back and hired this team to work on their hockey rink, which really wasn't hockey rink experts, and said, you did such an amazing job, we really love that creativity. We've got another puzzle for you. And we're working on it, it's quite a puzzle. But
That's quite a puzzle.
What controls does your firm have in place during the design phase to monitor design progress against the schedule? And what controls does the firm have during the construction phase for submittal review? If progress falls behind in either of these items, what action does your firm take to get back on schedule?
Great question, multi-part question. I think from a design perspective, we're always aiming for milestones. We say we're gonna have the schematic design done in 2 months. We aim for that, and every few weeks we check in, how we doing, how are decisions being made on our side, how are decisions being made on your side. We're always nudging these guys, hey, we got a deadline in a week, when can you get it to us? We may have our deadline on a Friday, we get their documents on a Tuesday or Wednesday, make sure they're coordinated with our documents, spend a few days cleaning it up, getting it to you guys, getting it to whomever it needs to go to. And we do that along the process, along the way. We staff our projects accordingly, we build the teams internally accordingly. There's 4 or 5 people on a team, depending on the phase of the project. And so there's a lot of production that goes on and a lot of internal meetings and metrics. During construction, typically use, we're working with submittal process. It usually goes through a software, a project management software that usually the contractors have. It's called Procore. It's just one of many types. And the submittals get uploaded, and usually by contract we have 2 weeks to review those things. We usually turn them around in 3 or 4 days. It's
Yeah, and we keep an open communication with the contractor, and make sure that they're, at the onset of construction, that we say, yes, guys, what are, everyone, what are the things that have the longest lead time, and we work with the owner's project manager, the owner, just to make sure that we're putting pressure on the contractor, but that they're also letting the design team know which submittals and which requests for information need to be answered and need to be returned right away in order to not impact the schedule. So.
Yeah,
communication is key. Sorry, go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, there are certain submittals that have to be considered a different way, like for example steel or other like electrical. Nowadays we know that there's a lot of problem with the electrical pieces and lead time, so there is a strategy to bring in the submittals, the most important submittals, right at the beginning, so that we have time to review it and turn that back right away, so that they don't delay the project.
Yeah, and now with the electrical lead times, now it's becoming a very creative. You have to come up with solutions that are sometimes unique to in order to meet the schedules because of these problems with electrical equipment lead times.
But I think communication is key, right? We communicate a lot, we talk a lot, we present a lot. We're a graphically intense place. We're always showing images or renderings or some sort of clear information so that the building committee knows what they're getting, the department knows what they're getting, and there's design review that happens often. We go through a process of the design for the site, for the building. Then we start talking about materials. We bring material samples, interior material samples, and so there's a long process that we go through to get the project where it needs to be. But communication is one of the biggest pieces, I would say, that is important to any project success.
We have certain tools we've developed over the years to be able to present information like system selections, different system options, and also to get information, from the very beginning. So we make sure.
Hey, that's a great slide to talk about. That's a great slide. Yeah.
One example of a HVAC system selection options matrix that we like to put together. Since there's so many different options and they all have pros and cons, we like to lay it out in sort of as clear a fashion at the very beginning as possible to and listen. We listen first and then ask. We actually developed a checklist as well. We've done so many public safety projects that we, from the first day we're on board, we'll hand you a checklist, and it goes over all the MEP information that we need from you in order to specify the systems that are most fitting for your needs. again, this is the matrix with 3 different options that we felt were appropriate for, in this case, Dennis.
Dennis, yeah.
So we have advantages and disadvantages and space impacts, and we can go on to the second page with maintenance requirements and what fuel use and efficiency and again, just listening to what are your priorities so we can make sure to hone the systems in that we specify to meet your needs.
I think this is trying to end the interview. I don't know what's happening.
Anybody else on the committee have anything else they'd like to ask? No? Gentlemen, do you have any questions for us?
I guess the question, is how connected to the sites are you, and are those the sites that are chosen? Is that what's settled upon, and do you have a preference of one over the other? Is there a direction that you're heading?
I think the site selection is based on value, where I don't think we want to be purchasing land, and we'd rather put our available funds into building a functional fire department that's going to serve the town. So that's kind of the reason behind it.
That makes perfect sense. We've been through the property acquisition route, and it's involved and takes time and certainly costs money.
One of the questions, and I don't know if it's too technical or for this preliminary stage, and I noticed a lot of your buildings do have a lot of natural light in, which is great. But do you ever have a conflict with? I mean, I know some of our gear and some of our materials, and you seem very aware of the special needs of a fire department. They're affected by UV light.
Turnout gear goes in its own room, outside of it. I don't know if you saw it in the plan, but the turnout gear rooms are always, somewhere in the middle. And what we're showing here, Chief, is that it's there, right? It's enclosed. There's no UV. It's off the apparatus floor. Absolutely the case. We depending on how we work the plan, it might be near the washer extractor. There may be a direct corridor between that. This was let's get some information on a plan really quick to talk about the 6 bays and get a general size of the building. But
yeah, and the amount of direct UV light that would get into an apparatus bay, for instance, from the typical windows, and even just having one vision light of windows is not really enough to do that kind of level of damage. And there are some times where a turnout gear might be close to that apparatus bay, but it's not going to.
Yeah, I mean, and if all NFPA requirements are guidelines, so we're comfortable with all of the 2021, 2020, all of those parts and pieces and turnout gears. There's a new, I don't remember the number, it's NFPA 3000 or something about the turnout gear and carcinogen and I gotta refresh, but we're on top of those things.
Memorize code numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what we'll be doing this evening, after we conclude all the interviews, we'll deliberate as a committee and identify our recommendation that we'll send to the select board, and they will be meeting on October 30th, and we'll present the recommendation at that point.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, thank you all very much. This is we love doing this. We love talking about these buildings, and we wish you luck in your decision. We'd like to be the first choice, but if we're not, we wish you luck with the project because it's an important project.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. It's very nice to meet all of you.
You too.
Just a quick little layout of the land. You'll have a half hour for your presentation, and then about 15 minutes for some questions that we'll ask, and you can certainly ask us. But before we dive in, I'd like to at least take a moment to go around. We can introduce ourselves to you, and then the floor is yours.
Sure.
Chief?
Hi, I'm Michael Bryan. I'm the fire chief. Welcome.
Ari Sky, Town Administrator.
Taylor McDonald, OPM, Palmer Associates.
Alex Murphy, Pomeroy Associates.
Lorraine Carboni, Lakeville Select Board.
Matthew Simon, member at large.
Peter Conroy, member at large.
Nate Dowling, Building Commissioner.
Mike McCullough, member at large.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for having us here. Sorry to step in front of you. It's great to be back in Lakeville. Some of our history, we've worked on the high school and middle school, things of that nature, and did the original study. So to get started, part of our presentation, just to kind of give you an interview outline, if you would, is to, our experience as KBA, as a team here, your Lakeville project team, which you see before you today, and some members back at the office, not still back at the office, excuse me. I'm going to speak to you about the site evaluation and how critical that is, as well as the design process and overall communication and outreach to the community. So to begin, we want to talk about our, KBA's experience. We've been doing public safety since founded, it's like 64. Not myself, sorry. But with that experience, we've decided to bring certain things in-house. So obviously, municipal architecture is one of the things that KBA specializes in. We only have 2 lanes that we do there. We brought in Michael with the fire station programming specialist. So that's one of basically 2 things that Michael does within the office as far as programming. Site planning, Luke here heads up our landscape department, and then interior design, our interior designer here, Katrina Hay. I've also, at this point, jumped ahead. But a little bit of experience here with a few of the stations that we've done in the recent past, as well as some of the similar types of stations that we feel would kind of fit the bill and give you a good brush of the designs are not repetitive, so to speak. They're customized, they're tailored to each community and each department to basically speak to that department's mission, what their overall workflow is, as well as the imagery within the community. So we want to make sure that we touch on that as well. Your project team, I've already gone through and kind of introduced everybody else. I guess myself, I'm Todd Costa, principal in charge. Kevin, to my right here, he's going to be your project manager, your day-to-day contact from inception of the project all the way through to when you occupy the building. So he'll be the main go-to individual throughout the whole process and be your point contact within the team. As I mentioned, Luke McCoy heads up our landscape department. Katrina Hay heads up our interiors, and then Michael McKeon is our programming specialist. This is not the interview team. This is the team that you will be working with all the way through. With that, I'd like to pass it along to Luke in order to speak about the site.
Sure. So my role as part of the team is really getting to understand the sites that you have, as well as looking at the program as that's done, and then finding which works best for the 2 together. We know as part of the initial study, you looked at a few different locations already. So one was trying to renovate the existing location there, and then also moving north directly adjacent to the new PD. You did 2 actual kind of studies there with 2 different parts of that site, which had some constraints, obviously. And then you also looked at the other property that's located there. And the initial report indicated that that was the preferred site based on all that. So our role was, as we go through the program again, start doing the concepts for the building, reconfirm that that site still works, and make sure that we can fit everything within your needs and your vision and the department needs on that site, as well as address and get some further information on some of the constraints that came out of that study. We understand that although it's out of the buffer area, there is potentially more information that has to be done on the species, the habitat that's there, making sure we understand that. What does that mean, during construction, which could add to, or long-term as part of the project. And we've gone through that before, things such as box turtles and that, where we make sure that we have a plan going in. We make sure that when it's bid, they understand if there are parameters around, because sometimes there's cost involved to manage that. And then also making sure long-term wise that the finished facility still meets those needs. My role beyond just that evaluation is part of the design. So as we're taking that program, we're starting to put buildings together. We work hand in hand and collaboratively to take that building and start siting it on the site. so that we can see how the flow of the apparatus work in and out, how is circulation of the staff versus the apparatus coming in, and response times, looking at how that affects based on this location versus where it was, and making sure that we are maintaining, if not increasing those, or decreasing those response times through the city. So making it better, I should say, for that. And that's one thing about KBA, and Todd mentioned having it in-house, is that right from the get-go, we start working together. So it's not the architect playing site planner and trying to put the building on, which, you know, these guys know. I tell them all the time, architects are terrible site planners. So, you know, it's kind of nice to be able to sit and start right from the beginning with that. Also helps with budgeting, which we'll talk about later, and making sure all of those site costs are part of that budget early on. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike to talk a little bit about that design process and getting to know your vision, your program, how that all becomes kind of your overall building block for your building.
So as your project manager, I'll be the one that will be starting to pull all the pieces together, pull all the consultants in-house and our external consultants. But we start off with kind of our KBA's philosophy. And our philosophy is that this is your building. This isn't a KBA building. This is a building that's for the town of Lakeville, that it needs to represent exactly what the town fathers wanted to look like from municipal architecture. As you saw some of the list on our projects, none of those projects are alike. They're all a representation of what is in the project from the community that we've been able to call out for what that's supposed to be. We try to make sure that as we're responding to the information we're receiving from you, we're trying to make sure that the building not only meets the physical requirements for the firefighters' active activities during the day, we're looking into their well-being as they're living in the building, because generally they're working 24-hour shifts. We want to make sure that we've got facilities that will help them be comfortable and safe in their building while still providing proper response times to the apparatus so they can respond to incidences. We're also going to be looking at the materials that we select. We know that this is probably a 50-year building. We want to be sustainable. We want to make sure that the project has materials that are going to last the time that they need to, that are appropriate, that aren't going to wear out too quickly, because again, this building is a 24/7, 365 building. They're not gentle folks that are generally in the fire department, the fire service. It needs to be a durable building. To help guide us, not only do we deal with the building codes and some of the other regulations, that's kind of where we start. We always try to do better, whether it be energy efficiency or accessibility or response times. We've been kind of doing this for a while. If you notice on the front right-hand corner for the FEMA guidelines, that's actually a model that we had put together to demonstrate some internal training in separation of the building. We're fortunate that they used that. It was actually, I believe, Holden was the Holden PD that we did, fire department that we did a number of years ago. So what we're trying to do, we try to define your vision. We want to find out what it is that the town of Lakeville wants to do. We try to identify any of the challenges, whether it be on the site or operationally, to make sure that we identify what the goals and objectives are and that we meet them. We recognize that we also need to get community involvement, so we'll talk a little bit later about how we go about assisting you in selling this to the community so that they have all of the right information so that they can stand behind the project and vote for it. And then we'll give it over to Michael to talk about how he goes about the information gathering for the program.
Yeah, it's to go from the vision and then meet with the stakeholders, the users of the building, so we can understand better the operations, all of the operations, and as it's already been referred to, every station is different. They have different ways of doing things. There are some certain commonalities that we'll talk about a little bit later, or things that have to be respected. But from meeting with the stakeholders and observing operations, actually spending time seeing how you do things, and how much of that is really due to the restrictions of the building you actually have, and how much is, how you prefer to do it. That's what comes out of that is a program. So the goals of programming, we need to fully understand your operations, your needs, and we do that through analysis and also observation, as I mentioned, and personal interaction. with interviews with the users of the building. What we're trying to do is develop a program of all the space needs, make sure we have everything included, the adjacency is correct, and it's essentially a safe way of doing it. And I could talk a little bit more about that, but well, I wasn't yet. But we also want to identify and incorporate opportunities for on-site training, which is always beneficial to the staff and will save you sending people out for training. Really what we're trying to do is improve response times and health through intelligent design. Really, that's the message. And what I did want to talk about this in just a bit, you know, the separating the hot side, the contaminants from the living spaces, if you will, in a building, and how important that is. I'm sure you all you've read or heard about the fact that firefighters have a 10% higher incidence of cancer. That has to do, in no uncertain terms, with the contaminants that they deal with on a daily basis. So we try and design the building so we'll help eliminate those from, at least from taking them into your living quarters or bringing them home, God forbid. So it really, you know, it has a decon area where you first come in, you can drench, you can wash the backboards, you know, then you go into a laundry area where there are extractors for the gear, washer and dryer for other parts of the uniform. Then you can, the gear can go into the gear storage, and you continue into a hot shower area, so you can, you know, help get out the contaminants that may have found their way into your skin. And we have been using lately, well, we used in Needham anyway, steam showers. And it turns out that once they got used to the steam showers, the staff, you know, they don't want any other kind of shower. So it's pretty effective, something to consider early on to make sure that we really are providing a healthy path for the firefighters, so not bringing contaminants into the living quarters. And again, the HVAC system has to support that. Negative pressure on the hot side, positive pressure on the cool side, so contaminants don't find their way into the living quarter. We talked a little about training. That little drawing on the left, that's the one that was on the front of that book. That's Holden. We have done interior training towers, Nantucket, Sharon, that's the one in the middle. So you actually open up the stairs, there's a big enough space for rappelling practice, carrying dummies and hoses upstairs for hose evolutions, all sorts of things. And the also you know, offer the mezzanine, the practice escape, emergency escape, those sorts of things that can be built into the project at literally no cost, no additional cost. It's just thinking about it, planning it, you know, and getting it into the program. Also, of course, instructional training. More and more nowadays, firefighters need to have instructional training, including you can you know, bring a gurney into this space and, you know, practice with dummies and things like that. But didactical training, you need a space, let's call it a classroom kind of space. It's also an opportunity to interact with the community, because the community can also use this space when it's not used for training. And that's a handover to Katrina, who's going to talk a little about interior design and how we integrate that into the design.
Thank you, Michael. So you've heard a lot about some of the things that we kind of start thinking about early on, but we go even a step beyond that. We go, you know, 24/7 shifts. We have the thoughtfulness of safety and layout and design and function. But we're also thinking about the emotional side and aspects of the spaces. And this is a social space too. It's your family. You're there a lot of the time. You're connecting with other people. That's a very important part of the station. But also if you come back from a hard call and you need a little downtime, we want to provide, and we work with you to provide a space to decompress and just have some recovery time. So we're thinking about those details, as well as connection to your community, whether it's like a museum wall or some kind of, if it's the badge that's throughout, it's pride, it's about your community, and we think about those things up front. As soon as you're talking with us, we're thinking about how to integrate them into the design. We do take a holistic approach. It's not just about the design of the space, it's about the maintenance of the space. We know that the firefighters are the ones who are cleaning the space, and we are sensitive to making it feel residential, but operating as a commercial space as far as how to clean it and how to maintain it. And the green side of things, that's whether you want to do it or not, we kind of are already thinking about it, whether you ask for it. We think about those things, we integrate them, and they're seamlessly integrated both interior and exterior.
So to touch on what Katrina was talking about from sustainability, we'll also start to look at the project, other systems that are powering the building, whether it be we look into geothermal or photovoltaics on the roof. By code, we're required to provide the structural ability to support the photovoltaics on the roof. A lot of the projects we've done recently have gone that route and put photovoltaics on the roof, but we'll also take advantage of exposures of the building for daylighting inside, so that, as Katrina talked about, the emotional and the environmental impact of your room on your well-being as a firefighter in the building is enhanced. Part of good design, we typically will always do LED lights for low energy use. We'll use high efficiency boilers. As you can see, we've done a number of projects that have been either LEED certified or kind of LEED friendly. And we've recently completed 2 projects with Beverly PD and North Acton Fire Station as net zero projects. The only fossil fuel on the project is for the emergency generator. And that's one of the NFPA requirements, that you have an independent fuel supply for your emergency generator. But otherwise, there's no fossil fuels used or stored on the site. So when we start talking about programming, we start to put kind of, as some of us older folks would say, we put pencil to paper, but now once we start moving the mouse, when we start designing, and when we design, we use a BIM software called Revit. It allows us to develop our projects in 3 dimensions. So as we're starting to put a room on a floor plan, we're also thinking about how big it is, size, for the full 3-dimensional characteristics of it. So as we start putting the project together, we're giving you a real-time massing model, and we're able to put you actually, as a firefighters, in the occupants of the building, in the building. We can put the VR goggles on, as you can see the picture. We can actually let you walk through your building from the time you walk in the front door, or from the staff entrance, through leaving the building and the apparatus on a call. It also allows us to do a lot of quality control measures all through the design process, where all of our consultants are required to do their modeling in 3 dimension, so we can find out any clashes, and we can solve those problems electronically before we go out to bid, because we don't want to be paying for conflicts in the field, because that becomes very expensive.
This software, just to add something on there, this software permits all of our consultants and all the people in the office working on it to view a model at the same time. When someone changes a pipe, moves a pipe or a duct or something, you see it in real time. So it's a lot easier to coordinate.
So what this allows us to do is it allows us to start the budgeting process very early. Like anything, the first number that gets out there needs to be right. It can't be kind of walked back, if you will. We know that when we set up an opinion of probable cost at the very early conceptual stage, that's the number that's going to be kind of floated out to the community. We know we're not going to be able to go back after. So we build our project budgets with your OPM to make sure that we're covering all of the costs. We'll do periodic reviews as issues come up and they have been initially thought of in the very early conceptual stage. We'll use that. We'll test that against the budget. Does that fit? Doesn't it fit? If it's a requirement, where might we have to make some compromises someplace else? But we're very budget conscious from the very beginning of the project. As you can see, part of our project we will do it at an estimate at schematic design, design development, and then again at 75 or 90% CD completion. The whole project team will be involved in reviewing it, not only your OPMs, but the rest of our design team and the rest of the department, to make sure as many eyes on it can make sure that everything that is in there is supposed to be in there, and we eliminate any kind of scope creep or scope gaps which cost money at the end of the project. By using the BIM, it allows us to do a very good level, high level of coordination, and that results in very few change orders, or very low dollar amounts for change orders. As you can see with North Acton, where we started off at about a $10.7 million project, when it was all final completed, including all change orders, we were at 7.9. Some of that was trying to get numbers down to where it was more palatable, but it also shows that with our CD estimate and what our final project was, we were almost right on the button. I want to take a little credit, that was one of my projects also. And then also in Leominster, which is just about to open up probably the next month, we're running at about a 1.2% change order rate on a $26 million job. That initially, when we started this during COVID, we thought we were at 30 million. We went to bid, we thought that our cost estimates were telling us we think you might not even have the number that we were going out with. He thought we might be another $500,000 in trouble. As it turned out, we happened to have a real sweet spot about 2 years ago. And then COVID, we ended up coming in $2 million under. We were able to put that money back to the city, and now we've only expended 1.2% of the contingency for construction-related change orders. We did notice that in your RFQ that you had a start date of almost a month earlier. We took the time to take a look at the schedule with our manpower, and we feel that even losing the month with the manpower and the horsepower that we have internally with KBA, between the 3 offices with 75 design professionals, that we feel that we can still meet your deadline of the Springtown meeting in May. Going to be a little condensed with some of our normal times, but we think that it's still very doable. And one of the last things we do, we need to communicate with the public, and I'll turn that over to Luke to walk you through kind of some of the efforts that we help you with.
So one thing that we've realized and we've kind of learned over time with doing these is that outreach really should start at the beginning and making sure that it's transparent to the public as to what options you're looking at, why decisions are being made, instead of a robust outreach at the very end once all the decisions are made. It's much more engaging for the community, and it allows them kind of to process and understand how it went from one step to the other. How we do that is working with you to better understand your community, what works best here, whether it's a combination of using social media, website, whether it's a town website or we build a project-specific website, mailers, community forums, any of that, and we help you with those, whether taking part in being there to help answer questions, present the project, or providing you the materials that you need to post on those others. We've also set up where on those sites there's question and answer where the community can submit questions in, they come into a delegate, and then it's answered and posted right back up. So there's one place for the community to go to get the answers so that there aren't the rumors spread or the hearsay of what the belief is that the answer is, but it's all in one place. Again, we start that early on and we carry all the way through for that, for the project with you, and we'll help develop what that plan looks like as we start through the feasibility study.
So this is where I come back. So through the presentation, we've given you kind of an example of how we as KBA kind of want to or would desire to work with you to bring your project to fruition. All the way from assessing your needs, through the defining the spaces, through the design process, and then even engaged with you out spreading the proper information to the community. So with that, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here, to present with you this evening, and then basically open it up to any questions that you may have.
Okay. Chief?
This is just in reaction to your presentation, but you specified the outreach portion of things. Is that something that you do internally, or is it something that you sub out, like to a public relations firm or anything like that?
Chief? I live in Middleborough, so I'll be here. And if you want a close example of that, and I was actually having a conversation with Chief Weston in Carver not too long ago, and he's through his process. He actually one evening before we had a coordination meeting in our office, he was reviewing the drawing set with me till 3 a.m. over a few beers as
Beverages.
just to go through the document set so I could have all this information ready for the consultants the next day. So it's a passion.
All right, so here's the special question. Can you please elaborate on your firms and consultants as well, current workload and commitments aside from this potential project, and are you immediately available for this project?
Excuse me. Myself, as I mentioned, one of my major projects is the Leominster PD, which is going to be closing up and getting substantial completion probably in less than a month. So this will fit in nicely to where my time was for that. So my normal other workload, this fits in as one project's coming off. This is fitting in nicely, time-wise.
When we assemble the teams, that's one of my jobs, is I make sure that the workload is spread appropriately amongst the consultants. Make sure the consultants that we select have enough capacity based on what we're giving them, and then also knowing that we're only part of that equation, and some of our either competition or other architects are definitely giving them work. So I weigh that all in, and like Kevin said, I knew this was coming to an end for him, so he can slide right over.
Okay, so tell us a little about what interests your firm about this project and what are the biggest attractions of this job to you?
Can I say something about that? One of the first, we opened an office up here in 1999. And before that, we did 2 or 3 projects here, and one of them was the Aponequid High School. And I worked on that. And I worked on a middle school. And it got the feel, I was coming back and forth before we actually opened the office, got the feel for a while that I actually lived in town. So I've always felt personally an attachment to the town. So I was interested when I heard that you were, looking to build a fire station. So and again, as Todd says, we have to make sure that we can handle it and schedule and things like that. But to me, this was a natural to come back and contribute after having been here so long is, just a personal high, if you will.
Very much the same. I was actually working on a cardboard box in '99 for KBA. I was one of the first people coming through the door. But Freetown Lakeville Middle School was one of the first jobs I worked on here with this company, and then being so close, it's just a number of God, I can't pull up the word, but it fit right. Being so close to where I live on a regular basis, as well as this is what we do, and being able to come back and work with a pre-existing client.
It's really a question of bringing an expertise that we have to a town that we've worked with before and would like to continue to work with.
Can you describe the challenges that you see with this project, and have you considered how you may overcome them?
Yeah, first of all, I'll tell you, a lot less than Bedford.
Probably the site.
Site, yeah. I think we all know the site's going to be a challenge. We saw from the initial study, but that's not abnormal to us. Most of the municipal projects we do have sites that have challenges, and we have to work through them. So, for this, we'll start early on, engaging with the departments here in town, getting as much background as we can with them, and working through how we can, meeting with the regulatory bodies right up front, making sure that they understand and are aware of the concepts so that we can plan ahead for any concerns they have and address them early on from there. I think one of the things that, because we are municipal architecture focused. We have a lot of experience in this kind of work and working with sites and working through them for municipalities. Coupled with, we do two things. We do schools and we do public safety, so it's right in our wheelhouse to work through
I
that.
would also say part of the challenge is public safety buildings, fire and police, both, tend to be very expensive. And very often towns are not, they're not used to that, so there's always some sticker shock. So the public education, the continuing transparency of, how big the building has to be, why we need all of this equipment to keep, the process safe, why it doesn't make sense, say, to generate our own oxygen rather than buy bottles. All these things go into the public education campaign. The transparency is important so people understand what they're buying and why it costs what it costs. And how much better or how much safer they will be because of it. And firefighters especially. But that translates into good response times and good service.
I think the other, just in general with public safety, is being a 24/7 building, is that energy and that sustainability and shooting for like the net zero we showed. It's very different than most buildings that are designed, which close at 5, 6 o'clock and they have the night to recoup. These facilities don't. So, we're very proud of those lists we showed you that are either set up or are currently reaching net zero, but that is always something that we have to talk through and can be a challenge on a facility such as this for that.
I have the next question. The town of Lakeville has previously completed a feasibility study for the fire station project. Can you please describe how your firm would use and integrate this information in this project?
Well, what we do is we obviously review what has already been done. We make sure that what was recommended in that is still a real recommendation, that there isn't something new that's happened in the firefighting community that might make us look at it something a little differently. So we will take what's previously done and kind of test it to make sure that it's still exactly what we're looking for, that there were no misunderstandings, that there's no change in operational functionality that might lead us in a different direction. But that's really where we go. We still want to make sure, we're still going to do our programming because we want to make sure that things weren't missed, things weren't changed. We're still going to ask the same questions, make sure that we get the same answers, and go forward from there as a good starting point.
I would add to that, again, I think there was, it's a good study. It's comprehensive. But one of the things I found missing, frankly, was concern for safety. I mean, it's alluded to a little bit, but not resolved, not proactive. It wasn't really talked about. There was no consideration in the design part of it. Conceptual, but it really should be there. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to show you that diagram tonight. I'm sure that the firefighters, seen this, not new. But it's something that the town, people in town need to understand. They need to understand that, we don't accept, and you should not accept, the town cannot accept, the town of Lakeville cannot accept that their firefighters have a higher risk of cancer than everyone else. It's unacceptable. It has to be dealt with. It's an important part of this project.
So you guys touched upon this already, but it's on the list, so I'm going to ask it anyway. The RFQ timeline requires phase 1 to be complete for a special town meeting in late spring. How does your firm feel about this duration, and can you please briefly describe your proposed process and schedule to accomplish that goal?
In reality, I'd love to have the extra month.
Yeah.
However, like I said, we do have the depth of talent to be able to kind of bring more people in as we need to be. As the design evolves, as the budget starts to evolve, we have the ability to bring the resources to bear to make sure that we hit our deadlines. We'll set up regularly scheduled meetings with the user groups, including the OPM and the committee and the firefighters, to make sure that we're hitting milestones. We'll come up with what you saw for that schedule. That's very just kind of generic, showing phases. Each one of those was probably going to be a meeting every 2 weeks, so that we can get information, we can give information, we have time to react to what's been talked about previously and continue moving forward. We try and set up a regular meeting so people get in the habit of, and we get into the habit also of, every 2 weeks we need to produce something, every 2 weeks we need to come to resolutions on things and keep pushing the stone down the hill, as you would, realizing that May is a drop dead date, it has to be done, and I think we've got an unblemished record of meeting if we say we can do something, we've got an unblemished record that, at least on any of my projects, we've never missed a date that it's supposed to meet.
I'd say, you probably noticed from the proposal when it came in, that was a lot more of a linear process. We're gonna start with this, then go to that, then the next thing. One of the things that allows it with the team that you see here, with the team back at the office, we can overlap that, work simultaneously, communicate on a regular basis, both with the user group, with the board, as well as internally, in order to make sure that we're getting the resolution and the questions answered. Secondary to that is the depth of experience. We bring a lot more to the table, so we can have some pretty candid conversations about what does the treatment of carcinogens, what does sleep deprivation, what does the flow of the firefighter from the bunk area to the trucks look like, and kind of get quick answers so that we can move that whole process along and accelerate the conceptual design, get into schematic design, and start pushing the overall imagery that really what's going to help sell the project to the community is what is this going to look like and how much is it going to be.
I would also add to that, we talked about this model, the 3D model, that's a real-time model that everyone can look at, work on at the same time. That really does help, even at the conceptual level, it really does help everyone get on the same page quickly. They could be sitting, the HVAC consultant can be sitting in his office, but he's working and he's looking at the same document that 2 or 3 people in our office are looking at and changing it in real time. That helps us clear a lot of items up that maybe you wouldn't normally have cleared up at schematic design. And that's another reason why we feel we can produce a budget number in schematic design and hold to it.
Oh, I'm next. I guess I'm no, I'm really not. Just really into the conversation, listening. Can you describe one instance where you had a significant issue or a problem during a project and how you addressed it?
I don't want to go back to using the same one, but my project in Leominster, we found out when we first got the project, we realized that we were in a floodplain, which meant we had,
guess what?
On September 11th, they received 11.5 inches of rain in 5 hours. The National Weather Service said that it was a 75,000-year storm. The building took in not a drop of water, other than the way we knew we put the building up on stilts. We designed the rest of all of the infrastructure, the transformer, the generator, the switch gear for where the emergency redundancy for the generators could be. All of that was picked up. It was a big challenge to utilize the site without worrying as little as we had to for where the floodplain was. Ultimately, we had 37 inches of rain in the lower level, which was set up as a parking area. Nothing down there. The only thing that was down was a couple of stair towers by design. Working with Katrina, we only put finishes in there that could stand to get wet if that unfortunate situation happened, and it did before they moved in. So all they did was they hosed it down. There's a couple of unit heaters because of because it was a 1,000-year storm. Some unit heaters that were up 18 inches was still underwater, so we had a couple of things there. But the building held up perfectly. Not a drop of water in the windows, or the roof, or any of the flashings. The landscape kind of took a beating, but when you get 37 inches of rain, it's gonna 30 inches of water. But that was one of the big challenges, was how do we take, we actually used it to our advantage. We ended up taking all of the stuff, putting it up, Now they have covered parking underneath, so if there was another flood event, they would know that it was coming, they could move the vehicles out of the way and keep all operations.
And there was some dialogue up front about, I mean, the FEMA map showed that I think there would be 4 inches of water on the site. And there's an additional cost in raising a building, as you can imagine. And I would say that town was at first a little reluctant to spend that additional money. But I think in the end, we sort of convinced them it wasn't worth the risk, and boy, did that pay off big time.
Between the infiltration system and the site drainage, the 37 inches of rain of water that was collected in the lower level dissipated in less than 24 hours. So the systems that we designed worked. I mean, they weren't designed for a 1,000-year storm. Obviously, we designed to a 100-year storm. This was almost biblical proportions, that the building and the site and the drainage and the storage capacities, they all worked. So that was kind of the biggest challenge we had on that one, which was probably one of the bigger challenges I've had to deal with since I've been with KBA for 23 years.
Okay, what sets your firm apart from other architectural firms with similar experience?
I was going to take it. Everybody look down here. So, I mean, it's we've been in town. B, up not very far away, on a regular basis.
Yeah, our response time will be good.
And the group that you see here is the group that you're going to be working with. And it's a passion for everybody here. We enjoy this building type on a regular basis. Anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I think it's the in-house services that we have. Not all firms have interior design and landscape architecture as part of the team inside with it. And then I think it is also just that experience that there are very few firms with this much public safety experience. We know that. We compete against them all the time. So when you couple that with the other stuff that was mentioned, we hope that we're the right fit.
Long-term relationship with Lakeville. I mean, I know Tom alluded to it, but that's important. We feel like Lakeville's our client. I really was disappointed when we didn't get to design the police station. We can make up for that.
Anybody else on the committee have any additional questions they'd like to ask?
No, good.
Okay. How about you folks? Do you have any questions for us?
Please, how we start.
Which will bring me to my next point.
Give me a Monday morning start program.
We'll deliberate this evening and discuss the interviews, and then we'll come up with a recommendation that we'll put forth to the select board, and they'll be meeting on October 30th.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Best of luck.
Really like the job.
Well, really, it was very nice to meet all of you. Glad you came in. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
All right, so we move on to discuss the interview results and possible vote on the recommendation to the select board. So I thought this was great having these score sheets. I did spend a lot of time, writing notes on the back side. So I would like to open it up for discussion. I'm sure all three, had some great information, gave a great, presentation, different. I would say that there's probably two that were pretty similar. One that was, I found to be a little different, but I think that we'll probably have a good discussion here.
Could I ask you a question? Did you guys keep score as well? And
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because
Okay.
I'm curious, yeah.
Oh, sure.
To
Definitely.
talk and sit with them.
Thank you.
All right, so how do you want to start this, I guess, Taylor?
I'll tell you what, this is one of the more hard ones that I've seen in a while. Usually there's a pretty clear cut in my mind when you have these, and I think they all did a good job in different ways, hitting on everything. I don't want to give you my personal opinion yet. I'd like to hear from the committee and kind of maybe go from right down the line. But yeah, I was different energies, I think, from each of the three. I think I don't think you could go wrong at this point with either one. I know there's some history with some of them in town, and I don't know that history. I'd like to hear some of that too, but yeah, I think we should just go through each committee member and kind of talk about what they liked. And I wish it was easier at this point, but I think each one did a pretty good job.
Thinking about the key factors, the site location, the safety of the building and, the personnel, the budget, the timeline, those were key. And, I did see that they were able to represent a response for those, which was good. So that kind of really helped me, kind of put things into more of a, who do I feel I could work with?
I think for me anyway, I thought Gallant spent too much time at the beginning on just his projects and what they've done. And, I think he would probably do a great job, and they do a great job, but it took him a long time to circle back to Lakeville. Was one thing that I felt. Whereas I felt the other two hit on Lakeville kind of right away and get into the project right away and their process right away. That kind of stood out to me, amongst other things with the interviews. But then I felt that, Gallant did a great job of answering the questions as well too. So, that was just something I saw right up. I like to see how quickly they kind of zone into the project. Just thinking of things that are kind of up
Just
coming
to
up top.
kind of add to that, I found interesting is they're the only ones who proposed a layout.
Yeah.
And they looked at it for like barely enough time to even understand what the layout was. They spent all this time talking about their projects. They were the only ones who had a layout to talk about, and they barely talked about it.
Yeah.
Which was kind of an interesting.
I will say their
situation.
honesty though, when they said 6 bay, you're too low on square feet.
Yeah.
Maybe they're wrong, but they were honest and just said, in our opinion, it's too low.
So, for me, and I've been in town for 5 years now, and one of the things that we really, really have to weigh heavily is the ability of these organizations, these groups, to be almost liked by our bosses, the public. This town seems to react to the way people present themselves, whether they come off as respectful, they come off as appreciating the local history, the culture, things like that. And I know we couldn't go wrong with any one of these presenters tonight. We really have to consider how they're going to be perceived by the public, and also their ability to market the project for us. And I would just throw that out there as we talk about. I think they're all technically sound people, like they can get the job done. But I think what weighing heavy on my head is how these people are going to be perceived by the public, because the town has to trust them for this to succeed. And I just throwing that out there, so maybe you guys can look at these firms a little bit differently, maybe with that perspective about how they're going to be perceived by the people who are active in the town government and things like
What are you
that.
describing that exactly?
Well, I think so like I'll say Gallant has a very polished look to them and stuff like that, but I don't know if that would be well received if they're the face of that. So if that's the way we choose to go, then I'd prefer somebody else to be the face of the project than them. Because I don't think that our typical resident reacts to that polished look. They'll see that and they'll see perhaps maybe a project that has a little extra weight to the bottom line versus something that's providing value for the cost. You know what I'm trying to communicate?
Yes.
It's not about reality. It's about how it's received by the town, and we should be very worried about that.
I have one thing, it kind of goes along with what he's saying is public perception. This is, in my opinion, this is kind of like, you can overdo it. He said, we need to start approaching the public right now, or pretty soon. That's great, and that's a good idea to get them on board. However, you can't just say, hey, we're gonna build a fire station. What do you think? They're gonna be like, oh, what's it gonna look like? How big is it? How much is it gonna cost? Oh, I wanna see pictures. And none of that stuff's 7 months away, 8 months away. So I think it's a fine line between getting started right now, like he did, and I think that's a great idea. You can't get the whole town on board next May 1st for a May 18th meeting or a June 2nd meeting. It's too late, but not too soon either. You have to have some kind of a price and a picture at the very least, and definitely a location.
Yeah, putting information out too early can cripple a project.
Right.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
But based on your experience with other fire department projects, is the level of graphics and renderings that was shown typical for these types of firms? Because from my career experience, those are not the most polished renderings that I've ever seen. And I think that the renderings are gonna sell the project to the public because they don't understand looking at plans. Even if they had a chance to look at them, all they get to see is the pretty picture. Mm-hmm. And if the picture's not pretty enough, they're not buying it. Yeah. So I'm just curious if that's kind of the standard. I saw renderings from the first two companies. I saw kind of one rendering-ish from KBA at the end. It did look slightly more polished, but it was a more artistic style rendering, so it was kind of hard to compare it to the other two, but they just didn't seem as polished as I was expecting.
I doubt they've put much into, developing renderings at this point. I don't know if I interpret much out of that.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I don't know if I interpret much out of that, Dave. I mean, they basically did the idea of renderings kind of gratis. They're not really renderings yet. I think there'd be an expectation that renderings will be, architectural quality.
Well, throughout their presentations, though, they had shown renderings from other projects, and they just didn't seem, like I said, as polished as I was expecting. And all of the material that they've given us are all photos, for the most part, of existing projects. So that was kind of the first chance that I had to see kind of what their rendering capabilities were, and it just wasn't as.
So you're talking about Galantes? Are you talking about?
Galantes and the
really
first,
all three.
All three in general. I felt like like I said, they just didn't have that kind of pizzazz to them that a lot of times you need to sell the project. And I deal with it on a regular basis. We have people in-house who only do renderings, and they come out and they're like they look better than it does in person when the project is complete. So that's my only concern, because like I said, we need to sell this project, and that's what's gonna sell the project. And so if the rendering quality isn't there, people are gonna, it's not as easy to sell.
Yeah, I would say at this level during an interview, this is probably kind of what you're gonna get, even if it's from other projects. But I will say I've worked with both Secotio and KBA, and as that process gets down the line, those renderings do become professional renderings that we would use in presentations. I've seen the finished product from those two firms.
Okay.
And I've worked with Galante.
Yeah.
So, and I can tell you, we had to sell to the city council, which was not an easy thing to do. And they did an extremely good job with their renderings.
Mm-hmm.
Really sold the project.
And I would say too, not just renderings, but now all the 3D animation.
Right. It's all the same.
Flyovers.
Yeah. But if the graphics aren't there, it's just it falls on its face.
It looks hokey.
Yeah. Exactly.
I would agree. I think they could have done a better job of showing finished products and saying, this is what we brought to a presentation to sell this project. Yeah. I think they were trying to hit on a lot at once.
Yeah, I understood. That's why I asked the question, because I'm just trying to get a sense
that's
for
a great point.
what to expect.
Taylor, you you probably have a better feel than most of the acceptable style of a building in this town, what people probably would like to see and find acceptable. And having either worked with or have knowledge of these companies, who do you think is most likely to present a building or design a building that's probably going to be most marketable, but also meet the needs of the mission?
Yeah, I'm between two in my mind right now.
And probably the same two as mine.
Yeah, that I think can just meet the style better, because I've seen them do it. I don't want to talk bad about Galante, or I haven't worked with them, and they kind of talk about themselves as what do they call this? A city architect or
urban architect.
architect.
Yeah, I can tell you that they, so just from experience, Ted's an extremely talented architect.
Yeah, I know that.
For example, the building he did in New Bedford, they actually just sold it. You know that beacon they had at the front?
Mm-hmm.
That was inspired by the fact that that was an old church that got torn down. They put a new building. The new building was supposed to be sort of echo reminiscent of the church. And it was just a remarkable idea to put this kind of beacon up there like that. It was really cool, really great for a city like New Bedford when you think of it here.
Yeah.
You know, and as to whether they have the conceptual vision to kind of get themselves into thinking in this sort of small town kind of way, I have no idea. I really don't, because I have no experience doing that. I mean, the ones they mentioned here, let's see, wait a minute. Like FDNY, New Bedford, Davenport, most Belmont a little bit. Most of these are all big city kind of urban environments, and Ted was very honest about that, I think. So, in my mind, that would be a strike against. I think, and I'm not just using platitudes here. I don't think we can go wrong with any of these.
No.
I think they're all really, really good architects, really well qualified for this. It's just a question of fit, and what's the right kind of fit. I'm not sure what the answer to that is. I'd be comfortable with any of the three myself. I might have them rated all within a point of each other.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, isn't that
So I
funny?
mean, it's like 24, 23, that kind of thing. It's straight. So basically, really no major difference between them that way.
One of the things I've kind of did a little more traveling than some of the people in the group as far as seeing stations. And one of the things that I don't have enough experience to figure out is what to attribute bad things to. Is it a design flaw? Is it a chief that wouldn't listen to a professional? I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't like about the stations I've seen, and I don't know who to blame.
That's a tough one, because after everybody's gone and things and the dust settles, and for instance, a chief moves on and a new chief is in there, and somebody comes in and hey, why was that designed like that? Oh, because the OPM told them to take it out. And, professionals get a bad rap for things sometimes because people don't know the whole story. And it's tough unless you were part of that project team, I guess, in many ways. So, do you have a specific question about something that was brought up, or?
No, I mean, it's just, I go around and I take, I found Nantucket to be kind of a cluttered building and poorly organized.
Yeah. And that was a KBA building, right?
And that was a KBA building, and then do I blame the architect for that, or do I blame the committee that did the programming interviews and things like that? Like, I don't know if they got, garbage in, garbage out kind of a thing. And so I don't want to misspeak and place blame, because it's, fire chiefs tend to throw the architects or the professionals under the bus unless it's a new chief, and then that new chief throws the last chief under the bus.
Yeah.
But, so I guess I came in with like some opinions about these architects, and they did really well to maybe lessen my hard position, and so now I'm kind of like looking for a strong opinion here, where I can piggyback onto. Like, I came in, with kind of I didn't, it's a preference thing. I didn't like the the modern design of Galante. Like, I didn't like that feel to his project. I think they're beautiful buildings, I just didn't think they were a fit here. But they presented really well, and one thing that Galante clearly had above everybody else was his knowledge about firefighter needs and the technology, and like he was familiar with all the NFPA requirements, and even like my little UV light test there, he jumped right on and knew exactly what I was getting at, like far superior. You know, he was able to speak to me a lot better than the other two presenters, but I don't particularly like his buildings. So he caused me pause. Like the one guy I wanted to throw out at the beginning, I couldn't because he spoke to me, you know?
Yeah.
So then it comes back to the other two where the old preconceived reputation with KBA is that they tend to build more expensive buildings. And I've understood that that's actually not so much true anymore, that they've kind of done a lot to repair that perception. So, you know, I've had all these strong feelings coming in, and they've successfully debugged me and made me indecisive, which is not a good thing, I guess, if we want to go home.
It was Sakatcha that did Brewster, right?
Yeah, that's a beautiful building.
That was
That's one of the most beautiful fire stations I've ever seen in my life.
It's a beautiful building.
And they also did the one. Was it Dennis? The one that had a house and had the bays next to it?
Dennis was Galante. Galante.
Yeah, that was pretty cool though.
That was like the house with the bays next to it. That one really spoke to me. I thought that one was really cool.
I as well like that quite a bit, but I had a question because I was curious with our lot restrictions here, with a building side to the bays, you start to get a very large building.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know if a building like that is possible on what we have to use. It starts to get really stretched out.
6 bays is a lot.
Yeah.
6 bays is a big fire station.
Right.
So the most enthusiastic recommendation I got on one of these groups was by, and they didn't mind me dropping their name either. Both the retired Plymouth chief and the current Plymouth chief spoke very highly of Secoccio. They couldn't say enough good things about them. And they plan to continue to use them as they alluded to that in their presentation, which Chief Bradley, respect him, he's a great guy. The new chief seems like he's a solid dude. And I value their opinion. And you know, that kind of pushes me that way. But God, there's something to be said to have, you know, the KBA guy over one town over, you know what I mean? Having them that close. So, Nate, I think you should push me and tell me which way I should lean.
You're doing a great job, and you kind of echo a lot of what I was thinking with this. So, when we first got the qualifications in, we were all like, oh crap, right? We don't have very many people to pick from. And I reached out to Taylor right away, we're in bad shape here and what. And we were fine. And then, you know, picking 3 of them and listening to them tonight, I mean, I was really impressed with all 3.
I told you, you'd get 3 different flavors.
Yeah, and so then we now have to kind of drill down into, like the chief alluded to, who's best for Lakeville? Who do we see ourselves working with? Out of the designs you see here, can you take one of those designs, plop it on a site and say, this is what we can? And, you know, for me, KBA, knowing some of the history in town, good, bad, and different, there's people that feel that they did a good job on the school buildings. There's people that think they didn't. There's feasibility studies that folks thought there was too much money. There was studies that people thought they did a great job and identified every shortcoming. The only concern I have with KBA is, again, we want this project successful. Now, I don't know if after watching this and seeing the design development and these things, and because of technology and everybody being able to be part of this process, they'll see that I think that they will do a good job. I just don't want to take a chance compromising the project over something so close. To me, Secoccio and KBA, spot on, both of them. They were dead even. I could easily go with either one of those if somebody made a motion to do that. Now I take out of the design and the building itself and say, okay, so now we're standing at town meeting and you've got some folks that had experiences with KBA that didn't like them, and they tell one person, and that one person tells 2 people, and 2 people tell 4 people. And it goes on. I don't want to compromise this project, even for 3 architects that'll do a good job. We know all 3 of them can do a good job, but we certainly, at least myself, can see myself with KBA or Secocio. I think we have a better chance with Secocio at town
Still
meeting.
think this is the coolest looking station now.
And I think without getting way down in the weeds and details,
Yeah.
I mean, I lived in town when the Ponequid project was done and also the other schools. And I don't remember a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth or unsatisfactory, vibe that came back from how the town felt about, KBA. I mean, I wasn't on any of those committees or anything like that, but it wasn't like, and I think over time, I don't think the school building, you know better than me, as far as maintaining the building and operating those buildings, I don't think it's been a big, there's places that shortcuts get made in the design and the construction of things that cost the owner of that building, over its life because of things that weren't really put together right. And the one thing I see, again, everything we saw tonight didn't change my opinion or my ranking of any of these 3 people from what I get more out of the proposals than the presentations. The one thing I think KBA has over Secocio is that person that's involved with the firematic programming. And I think, being an engineer, I always want to make sure the right decisions get made. And I think for the fit for the town, having someone that is, that's better qualified in some of those things is going to help the design process and get the right decisions made so that the building fits the mission of the fire department. And, they look at all 3 of them. I think that's the one spot where KBA has a leg up on Secocio.
And Mike, just to build on that, because your point is worth kind of reiterating, is the schools still use Castle Boost for a lot of their projects. So the schools still bring them in to, evaluate building system issues, and they do it over and over again. So I don't believe the school district themselves has a problem with anything that Castle Boost has done as far as design.
Yeah. Good.
I would agree with you.
Tell you listen to us. Would you have any guidance or anything for us to chew on?
Yeah, I mean, my rankings were KBA and Secocio, 1A, 1B, or, and you could flip them. And I think Mike hit on something, that is very important, is the firematic, programmer. And, I don't know if everybody knows Mike McKean, that was the older gentleman on the far right. He used to be a principal at KBA. And so he's been there for 30 plus years. He's tried to retire a few times and they've pulled him back in every time. So that's kind of what his title is now. So he cares very much about, everything that he does design-wise. So, that was maybe the reason I had them, 1A or over 1B. But I think being fully transparent, we're working with both of these firms right now on projects. And I think both of them do a great job on the projects that they're picked for. I think what you get with Secocio too is they're a smaller firm. They're not larger like KBA is with 75 designers, and you get that smaller feel that you have here in Lakeville. That they're going to be at every meeting, they're going to attend everything. Not that I don't think KBA will, but you'll be working directly with the owner of the company. There, you'll be working directly with Mark. We do that in Plymouth. We did that in Brewster with him. So
you'll be working with these guys for 3 years. So like us, you got to think about the fit. I
Yeah.
think you got a little bit of a taste of their personalities tonight during the presentations. I mean, again, we're working with Secocio. He's going to be honest with you. He's going to give it to you straight. KBA, we're working with in Abington right now. They have a very large team, and they have some of the technology. They talked about the VR, and we've seen some of that. So again, things to consider on both sides. I was with Taylor. I had 1A, 1B. So
yeah, and I don't think there was points in Secoshio's presentation that when Mark wasn't talking, I felt like the presentation was lagging a little bit. I didn't feel like the rest of his team was as strong speaking. I've worked with all those individuals on other projects, different consultants, and they're fine, they're great. But as far as being up there and presenting, that's something you have to think about too in selling this project, is those professionals that are going to be, if they ask about the site, you have Jim Jackson, who was talking for, Secotio versus, Luke, who was talking for KBA, who's, very engaging, and so it's really a toss-up for me.
KBA definitely expelled more enthusiasm.
Yeah.
You could really feel it. I did see that it was genuine in what they were saying. They want to work here really, really bad. I could have done without the police station comment. but yeah, I think they want to be here, and I think they've put their best foot forward, and we can't go wrong either way. So unless Mike wants to make a decision, we're going to be here for a while.
Yeah, I think, Alex brought up a good point too, and Mark said it. It's, you're in a marriage for 3 or 4 years. It's who do you feel comfortable with? Who do you think you're ultimately going to be?
Can we move the question?
Yeah.
It's getting going round and round for a while.
Well, I think that, having somebody that's going to listen to us is important. I mean, I think that number one, listening to what our needs are. So I think we'll be able to get that with those folks. That's kind of like a priority for me. I didn't want somebody to just say, "Oh, I hear you, but I'm not listening to you."
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So.
I'm trying to be conservative in this tonight because I was kind of forceful with the OPM. I don't want to be the bully in the room all the time. But having 2 fire chiefs, I spoke to fire chiefs that work with our 1A, 1B, and having 2 fire chiefs speak enthusiastically about Secotio kind of meant a lot to me. Like their reputation is now associated with that recommendation. You know what I mean? And they're both people I definitely one, the retired fire chief is somebody I worked with before and I respect. So it carries a lot of weight with me. And so it's when we're splitting hairs here. They're both great firms, and we can't go a wrong way. But like if I had to pick something out that's making me lean towards Secotio, that would be it. When Chief Bradley endorses somebody, he's been around for a long time, and he doesn't throw that out lightly. So.
All right. I'm going to entertain a motion for a recommendation of one of the firms that we saw tonight. Is somebody willing to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we hire Secotio as our architect.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second on the table. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye, or raise your hand so I can see it.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. No nays, no abstentions. I would say that Secotio would be the recommended architectural firm that we would like to bring to the select board on October 30th.
Yeah, so I looked up how we did this last time with the OPM. We just took the proposal and put it as an action item in the update and just add it to the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know you'll be working on an agenda review, so
Yep.
I appreciate that. All right, so we've identified our architect. Next item, tomorrow evening, I'm assuming we will have a quorum meeting with the parks. I just requested that some of the visuals that we saw this evening be included in that meeting with the parks, so that there's that visual from the recommendation from the Socotec study of the locations. So we'll have something in hand. I don't.
Been sent to them already.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, I sent it to Melissa this afternoon.
Okay, it was important that they have at least something, because I know some people like to have that in front of them, because they'll ask, well, I don't know where that is, or I thought that would be helpful. So going in tomorrow, we ask that we be first on the agenda at 7. So we're at 7. Call them, our meeting to.
Is it AM or PM? Just kidding.
AM would be
I'd rather
great.
AM.
I know, me too.
My kids would be
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I would take it.
I'm not sure, I mean, there are probably gonna be a lot of questions that will be asked, so, I wanna try to make sure that we stay focused on why we're here. It's about just the sites that were identified, that has to do with the parks, and I know Taylor, you'll help with, answering some of the questions that'll probably come up, but I think that this is a good step forward. We've made some great progress. Scheduling the next meeting, we'll worry about that. We'll work on scheduling after we have our select board, vote on.
Yeah, I think once they approve Secoshia, we want to get a contract out to them right away, so I will contact Mark, let them know that they were first selected. Just think about the proposal and start putting that together, just so we can hit the ground running.
Okay.
Madam Chair, would you like to have the OPM come to the meeting on the 30th?
I think that would be, we're getting married to you for the next 3 years. So when we have to go to a meeting and talk about the fire station building committee.
Just provide independent testimony to the town.
No, I think it would be, if you're available.
What's
for the
the
30th.
Tuesday night? No,
The
what,
30th is a Monday.
Monday the 30th.
Monday the 30th?
6:30.
Costume is mandatory.
6:30, okay.
So, no. But yes, if you can do that, that would be great if you could.
I think I can make that work, yeah.
All right, fantastic. So I am going to adjourn this meeting at 9:40 PM. Thank you.
Thank you.